The party glittered with laughter and champagne. But my world shattered when I saw Lauren, my wife, draped in a dress that hugged her like betrayal itself. Her boss, smug and too close, whispered something that made her laugh in a way she hadn't with me in years. My hands clenched. My heart raced. "Lauren, we're leaving," I hissed, my voice tight with fury. She turned, her smile fading into defiance. "No, Jack, not tonight. Not ever." Later, the note she left cut deeper than any wound. "You're just a cop. I've moved on." Her rings lay abandoned, like the vows she had broken. I thought the pain was over, until my father's confession revealed a betrayal buried in our family's past. The shadows of lies seemed endless. But this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a reckoning. Detective Jonathan Stone, known as Jack to his friends, was feeling very troubled. His wife, Lauren, had left him for another man after 4 years of marriage. On Saturday night, he returned home around 11:30, expecting a difficult discussion after the events of the previous evening. It was Lauren's work Christmas party, and she told him she would meet him there because she needed to help with the setup. He had dressed in his best suit, wanting to look nice for her, but felt he might still seem out of place next to the other guests from her job. She worked as an executive assistant at a big advertising agency, and her work had been demanding, with many late nights and short trips over the past year. In an attempt to reconnect, he had saved up his vacation time to take her on a special 2-week cruise. He wanted to make things better, whatever it took. Jack took a cab to the Radisson Hotel for the party. When he arrived, it was easy to spot Lauren. She was wearing a striking dress he had never seen before. It was shiny white and fit her perfectly, making it look as if it was made just for her. She was laughing and seemed pleased while her boss, who Jack thought was awful, was being overly familiar with her. Jack stood there for a few moments, feeling anger build up inside him. Then he marched over, grabbed the man's arm, and made him step back, which got everyone's attention. Lauren looked startled. "We're leaving now," Jack told her firmly. "No, I'm not leaving. This is my event. Why would I want to go home with you?" she replied, sounding defiant. Jack lowered his voice just enough for her to hear. "Because I'm your husband, and you need to come with me." He gestured toward a mark on her dress that clearly worried him. Suddenly, Lauren looked shocked and glanced down, realizing what had happened. Her face turned red with embarrassment. A friend hurried over and handed Lauren her clutch, insisting, "You should go, now!" Jack took her by the arm and led her toward the exit. The crowd parted to let them through, but then someone stepped in their way and said they were calling the police. Jack showed his badge and calmly said, "Don't worry about it." The man stepped back, frightened, and they continued outside. Once they were outside, Lauren tried to regain her confidence. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone," she exclaimed. "Like you weren't embarrassing yourself," he shot back. He signaled to the valet and asked, "Bring around the blue Lexus." The young valet nodded and soon pulled up Lauren's car. Jack gave him a tip and helped Lauren into the passenger seat, still feeling the weight of what had just occurred between them. The drive home was freezing cold in the car, even with the heater turned up all the way. They arrived at their apartment, and he parked in her designated spot. Her Lexus was protected under the cover, while his older Bronco sat next to it, uncovered. It seemed like everything was nice for her, but not for him. Lauren got out of the car and slammed the door behind her. She marched toward the front door, leaving him watching her walk away. He took 3 deep breaths, just like his coach taught him in high school. Then, he stepped out and went into the apartment. As he closed and locked the door, she turned to him and angrily took off her dress, glaring at him. He thought to himself, "Just like I suspected, she's not wearing much." She shot him a mocking look. "I guess you want to win me back now," she said. With tears in his eyes and a mix of hurt and anger, he replied, "Not like this." She gasped and looked down, clearly upset. He stepped closer, but she backed away from him. "I'm not going to hurt you. But I'm getting up early tomorrow before work and we will talk," he said firmly. She flinched as he walked past her and went to the spare bedroom, locking the door behind him. It felt to him like he was in a cage. It was a rough night, tossing and turning. Finally, unable to sleep, he got up at 7 a.m. When he heard the front door slam, he rushed into the living room only to see the Lexus driving away. As he turned to go back inside, he quickly grabbed his phone and hit speed dial 2. Strolling back into the living room, he heard a familiar tune. "I am woman, hear me roar." It was Lauren's call, but she wasn't there. Confused, he wondered what had happened to them. Lauren had always been high maintenance and flirty, but he never thought she would betray him. Now, he felt lost. He went to the bathroom and then started making coffee. While it brewed, he took a quick shower. With Lauren gone, he felt like he had the bathroom back to himself for a moment. After he finished, he got dressed and went to the kitchen. He poured himself a cup of coffee and prepared some eggs and sausages. Sitting at the table, he suddenly felt overwhelmed. He pushed the plate and coffee off the table, letting them crash to the floor as he cried. Feeling exhausted, he moved to the couch and fell asleep. When he finally woke up, he realized he had about an hour to get ready for work. He left the apartment without hearing from Lauren. So much for Saturday. The evening shift in the city didn't go well. There were no calls or events to handle, so Jack spent the time catching up on paperwork. That was tough for him. As his shift came to an end, his partner, Dave Templeton, told him he didn't look good and should take the next day off. Jack called their supervisor, Captain Arnold, saying he was feeling unwell and asked for Sunday off. Arnold agreed since it was quiet, and Jack promised to help cover for whoever would take his shift. Dave reassured the captain it would be fine. With that settled, Jack headed home to face his wife. When he arrived, he noticed Lauren's spot was empty. Just great, he thought. He entered the house to find it dark. He turned on the living room light and cursed quietly. She still wasn't home. Checking his watch, he saw it was 11:45. Then he spotted a candle flickering on the kitchen table. Next to it was a manila envelope with a folded piece of paper on top, along with her wedding and engagement rings. His heart sank. It was really over. He walked over to the table and sat down. With a deep sigh, he pushed the rings aside and picked up the paper. Unfolding it, he read, "Jackie, I am leaving you. Inside this envelope is a petition to end our marriage. I never felt we were truly married because you didn't meet my needs. You're just a cop. I've moved on and found someone who can give me what I want. Get over it, Jackie. Please sign the papers and send them back to my lawyer. You never even realized how pathetic you are. Lauren." That's it, he thought. It's all over. He opened the envelope. It contained the petition to dissolve the marriage of Lauren Stone and Jonathan Stone. Jack then grabbed the bottle of Chivas Regal that his dad had given him for Christmas, a gift he had never touched until now. He poured himself a drink, and by the time he lay down in bed, half the bottle was gone. After tossing and turning, he finally fell asleep. He woke up at 12:07 p.m. and groaned, realizing he had missed church. Then, remembering the reason he had overslept, he felt overwhelmed. He shook himself to wake up fully, got out of bed, and cleaned himself up. He needed to move on and find support. After dressing, he took the letter, the envelope, and the rings with him as he headed to his truck. At least some things were dependable, he thought as he got in, started the engine, and let it warm up. He put it in reverse and drove off, looking for coffee and donuts. As he drove, his worries filled his mind, and the more he thought about them, the angrier he became. His pain took a back seat as his anger grew. By the time he arrived at his parents' house, he was very upset. He parked in the driveway and saw his older brothers working on a car. They looked up as he got out, smiling and waving. "Hey, little brother," they called out. He smiled back, waved, and walked over to them, receiving playful slaps on his back. But they quickly sensed something was off. "Where's Lauren?" asked Thomas, the older brother. "I don't know," he replied quietly. His brothers could tell something was wrong. "Must have been quite a fight," Jerry said, the younger brother. Jack was the youngest of 4 siblings. Their oldest sister, Evelyn, was a lawyer and recently became a junior partner at a family law firm. She was the only one married. Her husband was also a junior partner, but he focused on criminal law. They had 2 kids, a little boy and a little girl who adored their Uncle Jack. "Where's Dad?" Jack asked. "In the garage," Thomas replied, pointing to the open door. Jack turned and walked toward the garage. As he got closer, he saw his mother come out of the kitchen with a cup of coffee for his father. He noticed her being sweet with him, which made Jack feel a bit uncomfortable. Just then, Jack entered the garage with his brothers. Thomas saw the moment between their parents and groaned. "Oh, come on, you two. Get a room somewhere else." His mother turned around. "That's enough out of you." She stopped when she saw Jack, her favorite son, though she would never admit it. "Oh, sweetie, what are you doing here? And where's Lawrence?" Jack's father's smile faded as he noticed the trouble on Jack's face. "What's wrong, son?" Jack held out an envelope and a letter. As he did so, the contents slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. "What's this?" His mother began, then gasped as she bent down to pick them up. His father took the letter and read it, then opened the envelope. He quickly scanned what was inside and turned to the old landline phone on the wall. He pressed a speed dial for a familiar number and waited, handing the papers to his wife, who was visibly upset. On the third ring, a cheerful voice answered. "Hi, Daddy. It must be serious for you to call on the home phone instead of your cell," she said with a giggle. Dad got straight to the point. "Evie, I need you and your husband here right away. Bring the kids. We'll take care of lunch." "Do it now." "Dad, what's wrong?" He hung up the phone. "Son," he said to Jack, "come with me." He moved towards the old refrigerator in the garage, grabbed 2 beers, and headed to the back deck. He told everyone else to go inside and prepare for a family meeting. Father and son stepped out onto the deck next to the pool. Jack's father shut and locked the patio door. Dad never did that before, Jack thought. Thomas approached, opened the beers, and handed one to Jack. "You're going to need this, son," he said. "I think I've had enough to drink lately, Dad," Jack replied. "Trust me, son," he answered, so Jack accepted the beer. "Son, do you remember when you were about 15 and asked me why I rarely called you by your real name?" Jack smiled. "Yeah, I thought you only used Jonathan or Jack when you were upset with me. Do you remember what I told you? How it meant more to me to ruffle your hair and call you son?" "Yes, I remember. Son, there are 3 things in life that can truly shape a man's life. One is being in battle. Another is the loss of a child while you're still here. And the third is when your partner betrays you or leaves for someone else. You've experienced one of those." Jack took a long drink from his beer. "What I'm going to tell you stays just between us, son. Man to man. It won't go beyond this. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir, I understand." He ruffled Jack's hair and looked at him seriously. "I've faced 2 of those situations. Before you were born, your mother came to me in tears. She was very upset. She told me she had been with another man and that she was pregnant. She insisted it was a one-time mistake. I felt like my whole life was falling apart, and I thought I had lost my family. Those 8 months were the hardest of my life, even harder than my time in Vietnam. I didn't know what to do. I thought about divorce or leaving her to deal with her choices. I even considered extreme options to show her my pain. Choosing to end the pregnancy was not an option for us, due to our beliefs and because it wasn't the fault of the unborn child. For 8 months, we lived in tension, pretending nothing was wrong in our marriage. I'm sure your siblings sensed something off, but your mother and I thought it was best to wait and see what would happen. It turned out that was the right choice. I prayed about it and shared a bed with your mother without being close in any other way. Then she went into labor. I took her to the hospital and waited in the waiting room. It was the only time I missed being in the delivery room for one of my children. It hurt your mother, but she understood my feelings. When you were finally born, I walked in to see you. Your mom looked worn out and scared. She held you in her arms and said to me, "Here's your son." I looked down at you and asked if she had chosen a name. She answered simply, "Jonathan." I stared at you and I felt something deep inside me. I knew what a father should do. I gently placed my hand on your head, moved your hair a little, and said, "Son." I sat down and she handed you to me. We spent several hours together in quiet, just sitting there until visiting time ended. When I got home, I slept peacefully. 2 days later, I brought you home. 4 days later, I returned home and she handed me an envelope from the hospital. She said, "I haven't read it, and whatever you choose to do, I will accept it. Even if it means I end up with nothing but you. I was wrong. I let you down, and I don't deserve you. I will always regret my choices. Just know that I love you and always will." Then she walked outside to the patio I had just finished and shut the door. I opened the letter, read it, and then tore it up and flushed it down the toilet. It was the paternity report. I went outside to the patio and walked over to your mother. She looked at me expectantly and asked, "Well?" I bent down, ruffled your hair, and said, "Son." She cried for a long time, and I felt a little overwhelmed. It took us a while to find our way back, but we did. That's why most of the time when I talk to you, I ruffle your hair or call you son instead of using your name, he said with a smile, unless you were in trouble or I was really proud of you. I was surprised. I had no idea. Dad finished his drink, and I noticed mine was mostly untouched. Dad looked at me. "I don't want you to think poorly of your mother. She is just human. What happened between us is private. I love her and have forgiven her a long time ago." I was caught between my feelings and thoughts. I took a moment, then looked at my dad. He was a man I respected and looked up to, but now I saw him as human and vulnerable. I needed to know more, so I asked, "Who was it, Dad? What happened?" He chuckled softly and looked at me with a serious face. "That's not for you to know, Jonathan. You're a good cop, and knowing more might tempt you to look into it. Let's just say he was dealt with and it won't happen again." He was in serious dad mode, and his expression told me not to ask any more questions. "Now let's go take care of the situation, okay, son?" We went inside to a quiet family gathering. My sister and her husband Daniel were there, and Evie, as we called Evelyn, was on her phone. My brother-in-law was finishing reading something that felt heavy between us. He set the paper down on the dining room table. "Did you know this was coming? At all?" he asked. "I was completely caught off guard, Dan, just like the letter. The first sign that something was wrong came at her company Christmas party on Friday night. When I arrived, she was dressed in a way that made me concerned. Things went down from there." Evie looked at me, the sadness clear on her face. "Okay, what do you want to do? As your lawyer, if you need my help, I need you to say clearly what your plans are." She set her pocket recorder, already on the dining room table. She glanced at her younger brother, and I could see her heart was heavy. "I want her out of my life. Divorced. Gone. I want to hurt her like she hurt me. I want to—" Evelyn reached over and turned off the recorder. "Honey, as your sister, I feel your anger, but you can't say things like that. So let's be careful. Now, do you want a divorce? Yes or no?" She switched the recorder back on. "Yes, I want to divorce Lauren Stone, my current wife." "Great. Let it be known that I am representing Jonathan Stone in the divorce from Lauren Stone, formerly Bobert. We will file for a restraining order against Miss Stone, noting her unfaithfulness and abandonment based on her own words. While the unfaithfulness won't hurt her much in Texas, the abandonment is serious. We can use that. I don't see anything wrong with what she wants. She's essentially saying to keep everything, just sign the papers. What about the car? I bought it for her because she said she needed something nice. It's in my name, and I'm still making payments." Evie looked at her husband, who simply shrugged. "Legally, it belongs to him. I suggest you stop payments, cancel the insurance, and ask for it back. Then sell it, just to make things complicated." He smiled at his wife, and she smiled back before turning to her brother. "Then that's our plan. I'll modify the filing and serve her at work on Tuesday. We're going to fight, brother." Jack felt a bit better, but he still felt terrible. His sister squeezed his hand. "We will get through this. Cancel your joint credit cards, move some of your money, change your paycheck to a new account, and cancel her phone. You know, the steps you need to take. Okay?" "Got it, sis." His parents joined in. "Make sure to listen to your lawyer, son," his father advised. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve this," his mother said. Jack looked at her and started to cry. He hugged her tighter than ever before. When they let go, he felt grateful to have them as his parents. His brothers were more cautious. "Don't do anything rash, buddy. We'll handle this when the time is right, and you won't have to worry about it. Just remember, what goes around comes around." What goes around comes around. 8,591 miles from Conroe, Texas to the beach in Sydney, Australia, a tall, slim woman with olive skin stood up from the sand. She picked up her light cover-up and draped it over her shoulders, shaking out her long, straight black hair that fell down her back. After thinking about the great white sharks in the water, she smiled as she grabbed her towel, high-heeled sandals, and small beach bag. She strolled calmly up the sand toward the parking area. Conroe, Texas. I haven't been there in a while. I'll have to stop by after I take care of things in San Diego. Sighing softly, she walked to the pavement, adjusted her sunglasses, and put on her heels. As she approached her British racing green Jaguar XKE, a muscular young man with a wife and two small children dropped their hands and walked toward her. "You shouldn't be here! Go back where you came from!" he shouted without looking at her. He felt a chill and hurried back to his family. "Are you okay, dear?" his wife asked. "You look unwell." "I'm fine," he replied, picking up his toddlers and holding them close. "And make sure you don't stray again," she thought as she considered her plans for San Diego. The divorce went smoothly, thanks to my sharp lawyer and the support of my colleagues. They helped me a bit within the law, of course. She became furious when she received the restraining order and countersuit at work, with many people around. After that, she refused to return the car. When she was pulled over for speeding, she was taken aback. "This is just a formality, ma'am," the officer said. "Don't call me ma'am, I'm in a hurry," she replied. "Yes, may I see your license and proof of insurance?" In Texas, registration is shown on a sticker on the windshield, but she didn't have the paperwork to renew it. When the officer returned, he asked her to step out of the car. She refused and questioned his authority. Looking at his name tag, he said, "Arnold Schultz, ma'am, you are under arrest." She ignored him and reached for her cell phone in her purse on the seat. The officer, knowing who she was, shouted, "Stop!" and quickly used his taser. Soon a supervisor arrived, and they escorted her from the car and took her into custody. I kept the team updated on everything that was happening. It was quite a scene. The car was taken away and then returned to me. I arranged for it to be towed to the dealership since it belonged to me. They bought it back for the amount I still owed on it, and that was that. By the time my soon-to-be ex-wife recovered from her shock, the officer who arrested her realized he had not explained her rights, so they had to let her go. She got upset again when she learned I had taken back the car. Tough luck for her. 2 months later, the divorce was finalized. She didn't want the attention since she worked in advertising, so she signed the new agreement and we were done. 10 months after that, I was shopping at H-E-B. I was pushing my cart down the aisle, picking up all the tasty but unhealthy foods my mom would disapprove of: frozen dinners, cupcakes, tacos, breakfast sandwiches, sodas, ice cream, steaks, instant mashed potatoes, and Peeps. All the things a married guy wouldn't be able to buy. When I reached the end of the aisle and turned the corner looking for cookies, I saw a thin Hispanic man holding the arm of a young Latina woman in a tight grip. It didn't look good. I walked up to them quickly. "Excuse me, sir, can you let go of her arm? It doesn't seem very comfortable." "What do you care?" he snapped. The young woman looked scared and pleaded, "Please, sir, leave us alone." "I can't do that." I showed him my badge. He went pale and pulled out a knife. It was a switchblade, which is illegal to carry concealed. So I pulled out my own weapon, and he froze when he saw it. For a moment, I think he thought about resisting. Then he let go of her arm, dropped the knife, and raised his hands. I looked up as if I were asking for help. "Jerry, call 911 and request a unit, please." "Sure thing, Jack," he replied quickly. "Get on your knees, interlace your fingers, and put your hands behind your head." As I cuffed him, I read him his rights. Just as I finished, 2 patrol officers arrived. I was checking his wallet when I read his name, Diego Montez. I took a picture with my phone and turned to the officers. "He's all yours. Book him for assault, carrying a concealed weapon, resisting arrest, and threatening a police officer. I'll handle the paperwork later. Thanks." They looked at the young lady and then back at me. "Thanks, detective. Appreciate you doing the paperwork." They smiled and took him away. I turned to the young woman, who looked very upset. "I told you to leave us alone!" she shouted. "Yeah, that's not happening. So what was going on here?" She looked at me as if she could make me disappear with just a glance. "He was just someone I knew. My ex-husband knew him and thought I would be an easy target." Her voice broke as she spoke. "Please, I have 2 young kids. I need to finish my shopping and pick them up from school. Please." I took a deep breath and studied her. All right, let's finish your shopping. What do you need? She glanced at her few items, then up at me. Milk, she asked quietly. I checked her cart. It had store-brand jelly, peanut butter, crackers, white bread, cookies, and tuna. Clearly, she was on a tight budget. Okay, let's get your milk. We headed to the dairy section, and I opened the door, grabbing a gallon of whole milk. No, I can't afford that. Just get a quart of 2% milk. She hesitated, then added, I cut it with water. I looked at her in disbelief. Really? For 2 kids? I then picked up 2 half-gallons of chocolate milk. Hey, one is for me. Tell your kids that Uncle Jack got them the other one. She choked back a little emotion but quietly said, Thank you. I asked if she needed anything else, and she shook her head. I sighed, feeling like I had done all I could. We moved to the checkout line. My favorite cashier, Christine, was there and greeted me with a warm smile. But when she saw the young woman with me, her smile faded slightly. The manager, Jerry, also waved and then looked carefully at the young woman. I got the security footage for you, Jack. I can send it to your email if you want. Thanks, Jerry, that would help a lot. The young woman stiffened. I told you not to do anything. I don't want to press charges. I was about to tell her that wasn't her decision when Jerry spoke up. I'm sorry, Miss Ortiz, but this is about an attack on a police officer. She went quiet then, and I could tell Jerry knew her. Noted. Christine scanned her items. $14.09, miss. She dug through her purse as Jerry packed her groceries and Christine started ringing up my items. I can't afford this. Please take out the milk and the chocolate milk, she said quietly. What do you mean? I asked, confused. She straightened and said louder, I don't have enough money. Please, take out the... I interrupted her. Just add her stuff to my total, Christine. If looks could harm, I would have been in trouble. She grabbed her bags, tossed them in the cart, and hurried toward the exit. As I pulled out my credit card, I asked Jerry, Do you know who she is? He watched her leave the store. Yeah, she's been in a few times and has been short on money before. We lent her a few dollars, and she always paid us back. She even insisted we keep a copy of her driver's license. He turned back to me. Why? As I filled my cart with groceries, I asked if he could send it to me for the report. He smiled. Of course, he called as I hurried out the door. I rushed into the parking lot and looked around in a bit of a panic. There she was. She had just finished loading her groceries in an old car. She slammed the door and pushed the cart to the curb when he hurried over to her. Hey, he shouted, making her drop her keys. She looked at him with irritation and said, What do you want now? You didn't say thank you. I was taught to be polite. When someone does something nice, you say thank you. She remained upset. Thank you, she said through clenched teeth. You're welcome. Bye. I walked over to my Bronco and loaded my groceries. As I looked back, I saw her standing with her head down, hitting the roof of her car in frustration. I got inside, started the engine, and left for home. Once home, I put away the food and then headed to the station. On my way in, I ran into Officers Donna Smith and Ollie Jones, who received a lot of teasing about their names. They had been the first responders for an arrest and were just finishing their paperwork. Hey, you're here to finish up the paperwork? Jones said. Yep, coffee is on me, I replied. Sounds good, Detective. Thanks. I went to my desk and started on the report. I attached the video from the supermarket, and 2 hours later I pressed send and completed it. Then I brought up a file, and there she was. Gloria Ortiz. Age what? 27? This can't be right. She looked 18 or 19 at most. I noted her address and checked her record. Ortiz, Gloria, age 27. Divorced, 2 children, Michael, age 7, and Marilyn, age 5. Currently on parole for drug possession. She had faced a serious attack and was living in Conroe, Texas. Her ex-husband, Marcus Watson, age 32, was in prison for a long list of crimes, serving 15 to 20 years. I leaned back in my chair. No wonder she seemed so frustrated. She needed a break. I logged off my computer, stretched, and stood up. I headed to my truck and drove home. When I got to my apartment, I kicked off my shoes. I took out some hot dogs, opened a can of beans, and put the hot dogs in my air fryer while I warmed the beans in the microwave. I also grabbed some drinks from the fridge along with buns and mustard. Ah, home cooking. The microwave beeped and then the air fryer chimed. I took a paper plate and set the hot dogs on it, warmed the buns, and served the beans. I moved to the living room and put the food on the coffee table, knowing that Lauren would have been upset about the lack of coasters. I found it amusing. Feeling full and tired, I went to bed thinking about Gloria Ortiz. I found myself wondering why that was. The next morning, I showered and got dressed. I headed to my favorite donut shop, Daylight's, picking up a half dozen of their best treats and 3 cups of black coffee. When I arrived at police headquarters, roll call was just wrapping up. Officers Smith and Jones noticed me as they walked to their patrol car. I raised my hand in thanks, and their faces lit up with smiles. "You'll need to fix the coffee. It's black, but the donuts are amazing," I said. Donna Smith took one, handed the bag to Ollie Jones, took a small bite, and looked thrilled. "Wow, this is so good. Where did you get them?" she asked. "My special place, Daylight's on FM 1488 near my apartment. How's the coffee?" "It's not bad," Ollie said with his mouth full as he reached for another donut. "Thanks for your help yesterday." "Miss Ortiz appreciates it too," I added. Donna chuckled softly and replied, "I can imagine." "All right, we need to get to work. We'll see you later," said Donna. I sat down at my desk, sipping my coffee and checking my emails when 2 files landed in front of me. Detective Sergeant Clint Wasser from Narcotics sat down next to me. "Jack, how are you?" he asked. "Pretty good, Sarge. You?" "I came to talk about the case from yesterday. That was really Officers Smith and Jones. I wasn't involved," I pointed out. He smiled. "Too late, Jack. They mentioned you." He tapped one of the files. "This is about a minor drug dealer we took off the streets. The reason I'm here is about his boss, Rafael Santos. We've been after him for 3 years, but he keeps slipping away. The young woman," he pointed to the second file, "was poorly treated by Santos a few years ago. She wanted to press charges, but his lawyers got him off by saying it was consensual." I looked at the second file and started to read it. Her life story was quite something. I looked up at Clint. "What do you want me to do with this?" I asked. He gave me that big brother look that many friends had since my divorce. "I thought you should see what you're stepping into. She's not a bad person, just had some struggles." He held my gaze, a typical cop move, but I was confused about how I felt, what was happening in my life, and in the world around me, and I was supposed to be a detective. "Thanks, Clint. I'll keep it in mind," I said. "But from the way the young lady treats and talks to me, I don't think I will be speaking with her again." "Really?" Clint said he would check in with me now and then and let me know if I found anything about Rafael Santos. I went to get another cup of coffee and thought I should have grabbed some donuts for myself. Back at work, I was focused when one of the other detectives mentioned they were going to pick up lunch. They were getting hero sandwiches from Jersey Mike's. I gave him a couple of dollars, told him my order, and went back to my work. After lunch, I had caught up with my reports and paperwork. I opened Gloria's file and relaxed with a Coke. As I started reading, I discovered her background. Gloria Ortiz, previously married to Lucius Wilson. They have 2 children. Divorced 6 years ago. Son Michael Ortiz, age 7. Daughter Marilyn Ortiz, age 5. Marilyn's birth was due to a serious incident involving Rafael Santos, although this was never proven. Later, Gloria was arrested for a drug charge and received 5 years of probation. Her lawyer reduced it to 2 years and allowed her to keep her kids. The same lawyer handled her divorce after her husband took a trip to Chicago and got arrested for drugs and other serious offenses. He was sentenced to 15 to 20 years and has 11 years remaining. Gloria changed lawyers twice in legal aid due to complaints about their behavior. Finally, she got a female lawyer who supported her well. The divorce went through smoothly, and her parole was manageable. Just then, my desk phone rang. "Headquarters, Detective Stone speaking. How can I help you?" "Jack, this is Officer Smith. I am sending you an address. You need to arrive as soon as you can. It's about Gloria, the young lady from yesterday." "On my way, I know where she lives," I replied, grabbing her file and heading out the door. I took the keys to an unmarked car and drove to her apartment. It was in a rough part of town. The Candle House apartments used to be nice, but now were in poor condition. I parked behind 2 police cars and saw Smith and Jones with 2 other officers. They had 2 rough-looking people in handcuffs. As I stepped out, I noticed Gloria's car parked by the curb. The driver's window was broken, and both driver's side tires were flat. The driver's door was also dented, but I wasn't sure when that happened. I approached Donna and Ollie to find out what happened. We caught those two banging on Miss Ortiz's door. She wouldn't let them in, so we cuffed them and brought them here. Unfortunately, the other three ran away before we could stop them. We searched the area, but they were gone. Donna then led me upstairs to Gloria's apartment on the second floor. We approached the door, and she knocked loudly. "Go away, Oregon, I'll call the police," she shouted back. "We are the police, Miss Ortiz. Please open the door," I replied. There was the sound of a chain, and the door opened a bit. She noticed Donna and opened it wider. Then she saw me, and her anger came back. "What do you want now?" she said. "It's about your car," I answered. Her eyes widened, and she pushed past us, rushing down the stairs before we could stop her. "We are experienced officers, right?" Officer Smith followed her, and I took a quick glance inside her apartment. It was clean and simple, much tidier than my own place. I closed the door and caught up with them, not eager for the scene I expected from Miss Ortiz. I was mistaken. Officer Smith and Gloria were standing in front of her little Corolla. I braced myself, but I didn't expect what happened next. Gloria suddenly began to cry and sank down. Donna quickly caught her, but Gloria seemed lost in her own emotions. She cried heavily with loud sobs and mixed speech that was hard to understand. "It's okay, let's get you upstairs and cleaned up," Officer Smith said. They turned and slowly made their way back inside. I took out my phone and called a friend. After 2 rings, Louis picked up. "Valone Automotive. Why are you calling my number, Jack?" he asked. I smiled. Louis Valone was my best friend from high school. "I need a favor. I sent you the address and the license plate of the Corolla. I need you to pick up this car and fix it. Tires and oil change and take care of her window. Bill me for it and let me know the cost, okay?" Louis's family had moved from New Jersey long ago. He was born in Montgomery County, Texas, but New Jersey was still a part of him. "I know I owe you for helping with Tony's tickets, so consider this even. I'm on my way," he said before hanging up. I smiled and went back upstairs. Gloria and Donna were on the couch. Donna was holding Gloria, who was still upset. "Okay, what's wrong?" I asked gently. Another wave of tears followed. "Do you want to share with him?" Donna asked. Gloria looked at me, tears still streaming down her face, and nodded. "I got fired this morning. Someone told my boss that I was arrested for shoplifting. He said I was a bad influence and couldn't keep me at his store," she said quietly. "Where did you work?" I asked. She looked down. "Dollar General. It was the only place that would hire me with my record and no experience. But he wouldn't give me my last paycheck. It's almost 2 weeks of pay. I have no money, my rent is due next week, and now the car is ruined. I can't even pick my kids up from school. CPS is going to take the kids away from me, and I have a meeting on Wednesday. Social services will be involved because I don't have a place to stay. I feel lost and hopeless now. Where did my strength go?" Donna was rubbing my shoulder and hugging me. She looked at me as if asking, "What are we going to do?" I had no answers. I thought hard about our situation. "Can we get her into the women's shelter in Magnolia?" I asked. "They might have room, but they won't take 2 small kids without getting CPS involved," Donna replied. Gloria started crying again. She was sniffing and struggling to catch her breath. It was clear she felt overwhelmed. I kept thinking until suddenly an idea came to me, just like in the cartoons when a light bulb goes on. "Let me make a call," I said. I stepped into the hallway and pressed 2 on my speed dial. After 2 rings, my mom answered. "Hello, sweetheart. How are you?" she asked. "I'm fine, Mom. How are you and Dad?" "We're good. What's up?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, I need a favor. I have someone who is really struggling and needs a place to stay for a few days." There was a pause. Then she asked, "What happened?" "She lost her job and has no money. She and her kids will lose their apartment next week." I could hear her hesitating, but as soon as I mentioned her job and kids, I heard her gasp. "Bring them here, Jack. Right away. Your dad and I will take them in for as long as they need." "Thanks, Mom. You're amazing." "I love you too, sweetheart." She hung up. I made my way downstairs to the squad car where the two individuals were waiting. I signaled the other officers to step away, and Officer Jones took a stroll around the area. I pulled one person out of the car and leaned him against the trunk. Then Louis approached with a little equipment. "You sure you want to fix this old car?" he asked. "Just find out how much it will be and let me know, okay?" I turned to the person. "This is how it's going to work. I'm a detective, and I don't have a body cam, so there's no record of this. You're going to get a ticket for disorderly conduct." He seemed relieved until I spoke again. "And you will tell Santos that Gloria Ortiz is in witness protection. Tell him she's off limits. If anyone comes near her or her kids, they will face serious consequences. Understand? If you don't, I will make sure all your friends know the only reason you're being let go is that you agreed to cooperate with the police. Got it?" He looked scared and said, "You can't do that." "Just wait and see," I replied. He nodded in silence. "I want to know," she exclaimed. "Sure, okay," he replied. I let go of his throat and told the two officers to write them both up and let them go, just as I said. Then Donna and Gloria came downstairs with 2 suitcases and 3 large plastic bags. It was quite a sight. They hurried away without looking back. I turned to Gloria and said, "All right, let's help you out." She looked around and asked, "Where's my car?" "Oh, I had it taken away to a junkyard. It wasn't drivable," I said, realizing I might have messed up. She became upset again, and Officer Smith gave me a disapproving look. "Jack!" "I'm sorry. I had a friend take it to get it fixed. I was just trying to lighten the mood," I said, hoping to ease the tension. Both women glared at me, and Officer Jones and the other officers looked for a way to avoid witnessing my trouble. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe and help you get back on track," I said. I led her to the car and placed her things in the back seat. Officer Smith handed me 3 business cards. "These are for her parole officer, her contact at Child Protective Services, and the lady at Social Services. Do not lose them. Let's take it one step at a time. I'll find her a lawyer first, then get her kids and help her settle down. We'll sort this all out tomorrow," I assured Donna. She looked at me and said, "Make sure you do." Then she smiled. Donna was friendly and pleasant, but she was married to an accountant in City Hall. I had played softball against him at the 4th of July picnic. They had 1 child together. I don't get involved with married women. I liked her as a friend and co-worker, so I kept it that way. We went back to the police station, and I helped Donna into my Bronco with her things. I returned the keys to the unit I had used. We drove to my brother-in-law's office next. As we drove, I glanced at her. She was curled up in her seat, looking out the window, lost in thought. I focused on the road and then spoke. "There were no child seats in the back of your car." My words lingered, but she didn't respond. "I don't have any. They're too costly. I just used seat belts and tried to make sure they were secure and drove carefully," she finally said. I looked at her. "If you'd been stopped for any reason, even a minor issue, and the kids were in the car, you could have faced serious trouble. Given your parole situation, it wouldn't have ended well." She turned to me and raised her voice. "I couldn't afford them. I'm doing my best." She broke down again. "Besides, how would you expect someone like you to bring my kids home? Just because you're a cop doesn't mean you can do anything." I held her gaze for a moment, maybe 5 seconds, but I knew I needed to keep my eyes on the road. I looked ahead. "Answer me!" Without thinking, I pointed my right hand towards the back seat. She looked at me, then turned to see the 2 identical seats with children's seats attached. She turned back to me, clearly surprised. At least this time, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I actually felt pretty good. "Do you have children?" she asked. "No. Are you married?" I sighed, and my thoughts drifted to a sad place I hadn't visited in a long time. "Not anymore," I replied. "What happened?" I studied her, realizing I probably knew more about her than she knew about me. It was time to share a bit of my story. "My wife left me and filed for divorce after saying I wasn't good enough. It hurt," I explained. Her expression turned to one of sympathy, shifting from judgment to concern. It wasn't the worst reaction I could have gotten. At least she didn't look like she wanted to attack me. "Then why do you have kids' seats in your car?" she asked. My sister and her husband have 2 kids about the same age as yours. I sometimes drive them around. My parents also have seats in their cars for when they take care of the kids, I said, thinking about my family. You'll meet them if you stay. My one brother has kids too. The other doesn't have seats in his Dodge Charger, I think, so he can make excuses to borrow my Bronco whenever he wants to drive it, I added with a small smile. She looked at me differently now. We arrived at Dan's office, the law firm of Wasserman, O'Connor, and Smith. My brother-in-law was a junior partner in criminal law, and my sister, Evie, had just become a junior partner in family law. Both were well respected in their roles. I parked in a visitor spot, and we walked into the lobby where Mrs. Marguerite Swanson, the receptionist, was seated. Jonathan, how are you? What brings you by? I'm fine, Mrs. Swanson. I need to see Daniel if he's available. She checked her computer. Just a moment, he's free. Go right in, Jonathan. With a quick nod to Gloria, she pressed a button to let Daniel know we were there. I led Gloria to Daniel's office and stepped inside. He had his coat on the rack, his tie slightly loose, and his sleeves rolled up. He stood up. Jack, what's up? And who is this? He asked, nodding towards Gloria. Danny, I need a favor. This is Gloria Ortiz, a friend. She's having some legal trouble and needs help. I placed her file on his desk. She lost her job and is about to lose her home next week. Dan extended his hand to shake Gloria's. Once he released her hand, he picked up the file, took a seat, and began to read it. After looking at the documents for about 5 minutes, he set them down and opened his desk drawer for his tape recorder, placing it on the desk and turning it on. Miss Ortiz, do I understand that you want me, Daniel Williams, to be your attorney for any legal matters? She looked at me, and I nodded my head, yes. She turned to Daniel and said, Yes, I do, but I can't afford to pay you. Don't worry, it will be free of charge, he replied. He then turned to me and added, I don't expect much, as it seems straightforward. What about her children? Should we involve Evie? I thought for a moment. It wouldn't hurt, I guess. Daniel hit the intercom button, and I heard my sister's voice. Yes, Daniel, what's up? Can you come in for a minute? I have a new client who might need your help, too. I'll be right there. About 3 minutes later, Evelyn Williams came in. She smiled widely when she saw her favorite little brother, but her smile faded slightly when she noticed Gloria. Hello, Jack. What brings you here? She asked, giving me a hug. Dan spoke up. Evie, I would like to introduce Miss Gloria Ortiz. He looked at me with a grin. She is a friend of Jack's, and she has hired me to represent her in a legal matter. She has 2 young children, lost her job, is quite tight on money, and may need a family lawyer as well. By the look on Evie's face, we had her interest. Oh, you poor thing, she exclaimed. Gloria took my hand and squeezed it. I was taken aback, wondering what just happened. Dan handed the folder to Evie, who opened it and began reading. He used the intercom again, and a cheerful voice answered, Yes, sir. Myra, could you come in here for a moment, please? Myra was Dan's secretary. She entered, and Dan passed the folder to Myra. Please make copies of these and start a file for Miss Gloria Ortiz. Right away, boss. Now we will speak to the assistant district attorney about setting up a hearing to review this situation. In the meantime, continue going to your parole meetings and don't share too much about your job or living conditions. Understood? She showed the determination I had come to admire. Yes, sir, I can do that. With that, Myra came back in with a file folder and handed it to Dan before returning the original to Evie. Dan took out the mini cassette from his recorder and placed it in the folder. He looked at me and then at the 2 of us. So what's next? We're going to pick up her children from school and take all of them to a safe place. I hoped I didn't blush as I said this, retrieving the original file from Evie. Thank goodness Gloria didn't know where we were headed. Tomorrow, after we drop her kids off at school, we'll visit her parole officer. I raised my hand to stop Gloria from speaking. I know you're not due to see him until Wednesday, but I know your officer. He's a good guy. We are going to work quickly, as they say, and try to get ahead of this. Then we will visit the CPS lady and finally the social services lady. After that, we'll pick up the kids and return to the safe house. Does that sound good? Dan looked at me, then at Gloria, and finally turned to his wife. Evie was watching us carefully. She turned back to Dan and shrugged. Dan smiled and handed me 3 business cards. Sounds good. Just remember, don't share anything new. Just bring them up to speed. We stood up and exchanged goodbyes. Gloria thanked her 2 new lawyers, and we left. As we walked out, Evie turned to Dan and said, "Well, that was interesting." Dan kept looking at us as we walked away, grinning. He turned to his wife and chuckled, saying, "More than you think, dear. Did you see them holding hands on the way out?" We got into the car and buckled our seatbelts. "Your sister and brother-in-law seem very nice and in love," she said, looking at me with wide eyes. "Yes, they are. Are you okay with everything so far?" "Of course. Why wouldn't I be? You just set me up with 2 great lawyers for free. Told me we are staying at a safe house, we're picking up my kids, and tomorrow we're facing my biggest fears." "Your parole officer isn't that bad," I said. "No, he's not the problem. It's the other 2. I don't trust them. They want to take my kids." Tears began to fall again. It seemed her children were the most important things in her life. "Don't worry. We will handle everything, one step at a time." She looked at me thoughtfully. "What do you want? Why are you helping me?" "You must want something," she said, her voice changing as her eyes narrowed and the tears stopped. Her frustration was clear. "You all want something. All men are the same. I have faced so much pain that you can't understand." She turned to stare out the window as we drove to her kids' school. I was at a loss for words. This woman had been hurt so badly that I felt like nothing I said or did would change her mind. Maybe I should just be honest with her. We drove in silence until we reached the school parking lot. "Park over there," she said. "They aren't taking the bus, so we need to wait here for them to come out." I glanced at my watch and realized we had about 45 minutes until they were done. I thought to myself, why not? "Look," I said, "you don't know much about me, but I know a lot about your life. So here it is." I shared my story with her, leaving out the conversation with my dad. I told her about my wife's affair, her leaving me, the letter, and the divorce. I talked about the hurt I felt from everything she said that affected my self-esteem. I was nearly in tears when I finished speaking. As I talked, she turned to face me, her eyes growing wide as my story continued. By the time I was done, she looked shocked. I stared straight ahead out the windshield, and she was silent for a moment. Then she reached over and took my hand. I turned to look at her. "I acted the way I did because it's how I was taught to behave. It felt right. I didn't want anything from you. You know what? My parents were right about that. It made me feel good. Really good. I haven't felt this way in over a year and a half since my wife and I started having problems. Was it me or did you help? I don't know and I don't care. And I haven't even met your kids yet." She looked at me for a moment before smiling. I don't remember seeing her smile before. She might have grinned or smirked sometimes, but this was different. It was worth it. "Okay, maybe you've had a tough time. And maybe you don't want anything else. If that's true, you might just be the only guy in history who didn't want anything more," she said with a smile. Just then, the school bell rang and the doors opened, letting a surge of kids pour out. Gloria got up and headed towards the crowd, looking for her 2 children. I got out and leaned against the front fender of the truck. Here goes nothing, I thought. 2 small figures separated from the crowd and ran towards Gloria. The girl looked just like her, with a smooth face and a soft olive skin tone. She had big, kind eyes and long black hair. She was adorable as she hugged and kissed her mom, holding onto her unicorn backpack. Her brother was a little different. You could see a mix of traits from both parents. His skin was a bit darker, and his hair was curly and short. He had a round face and deep, dark eyes. A good-looking little boy, he was all over his mom, laughing and looking up at her. He had dropped his Batman backpack but didn't seem to mind. "Good kids. They look happy. She's a great mother," I thought. She took their hands. He picked up his backpack, and together they walked over to me. I stood up straight and smiled at them. When they got close, the little girl, named Marilyn Ortiz, let go of her mom's hand. Hello, my name is Marilyn. What's yours? I'm Jonathan Stone, but my friends call me Jack. Want to be my friend? Okay, she said with a grin. Her brother, Michael, was less friendly. He dropped the Batman backpack again and stood between me and Gloria, his arms hanging down but his fists tight. Who are you? Michael asked, looking a bit tough. Okay, I can handle this, I thought. Then their mother intervened. Michael Ortiz. Watch your manners. She spoke with a motherly tone, similar to how she used to address me before. I signaled that I could handle it and knelt down. Hi there, I'm Jack Stone. I'm here to help your mom, and I want to help you and your sister, too. I see that you're in charge of security here, so I need your help to keep you all safe. What do you say? Can we make a deal? I extended my hand for a handshake, but he just looked skeptical. Then I remembered that my nephew Daniel Jr. has a fun way of greeting people that he thinks is cooler than shaking hands. He says, "That's for old people." So, I pulled my hand back and smiled. Are you sure you won't help me, buddy? I made a fist and offered it to him. His face changed and he stared at me, uncertain. Slowly, he turned his head and bumped his little fist against mine. Deal, Mr. Stone, he said with a small grin. I returned the grin, retracted my hand and spread my fingers wide. His face lit up with a big smile. I stood up and said, "Come on, time to get moving." Leading the surprised mother and her two cheerful kids to the Bronco, I motioned for Michael to come over and open my door. I knew he could get in on his own, so I let Gloria help her daughter Marvin in from the other side. Up you go, buddy. He stared at the Bronco, clearly impressed. This is yours? Yep. He climbed in and faced the special bucket seat in the back with the child seat. Now, by state law, you have to sit in this seat or I could get in big trouble. Let me show you how to strap in, just like the astronauts. Then you can help your sister when she gets in, okay? He was fascinated as I demonstrated how to buckle himself in. When I unbuckled him, he gave it a try and succeeded right away. Solid, Jackson, I said. He looked at me curiously. Old joke. Never mind, I replied. I got into the front seat and Gloria had already buckled in Marilyn and was securing herself. I turned the key and the engine roared to life. Contact! I exclaimed, making Gloria giggle while the kids looked puzzled. We drove off to the safe house. After my divorce was final, I decided to treat myself a bit. I visited the best jewelry store in town, the same place where I had bought Lauren's engagement ring. There's an old saying that an engagement ring should cost a month's salary, so I spent $5,400 on a ring I thought was perfect. It would mean a lot of basic meals for a while, but she was worth it. The jeweler listened to my story and felt sympathetic. Plus, the ring was now worth over $7,000. After spending $6,000 and another $1,500 on wedding bands, he joked about melting them for the gold, I headed to the four-wheel drive shop in town. I took my one loyal companion, my '81 Bronco, and spent a lot of money on her. I bought new bucket seats, a stereo system, an improved suspension, a roll cage, a new exhaust and intake, and a tinted section on the fiberglass roof with a sunshade. After spending $11,000, I felt good, my truck felt great, and I had finally moved on from Lauren. You see, she never liked riding in the Bronco, she preferred the Lexus when we went out together. So, here we were driving along, and soon the kids were bouncing in their seats, singing along to the radio. Their mom was smiling and seemed to be relaxing. She had tucked her legs up under her and was almost curled up in her seat. She had stopped looking out the window and was now focused on me. You made quite an impression on my children. I admit Marilyn is a bit easily swayed, but Michael is more cautious and takes my safety seriously. He is very protective of me. She was smiling and enjoying the moment. So is this your only vehicle, Jack? I can't believe women like riding in something like this. Not that I don't like it, she said playfully. I do. Wow, I could tell she enjoyed the ride. I glanced at her and she met my gaze with a playful grin, keeping her eyes locked on mine. So, where are we headed? How secure is this safe house? Who's in charge there? I felt a bit uneasy. This was unlike Gloria. Oh, I think you'll be happy. The people who run it are good folks, and they keep you safe. I chuckled to myself, thinking of how my mom even had a permit. Anyway, I think you'll fit in just fine. Uh-huh, she replied. We drove in silence, both lost in thought. This was such a change in how she was acting towards me. What was going on? When we pulled into my parents' driveway, I could tell my mom was waiting and watching. Just as I parked the truck, she rushed out to meet us. I got out to greet the most important woman in my life so far, and led her to the passenger side of the Bronco. Gloria opened the door and climbed out carefully, smoothing her pants, then stood up straight to face my mom. Mom looked at her, then turned to me, her mind racing. She seemed to think, this girl is special, both as a woman and to him. She's sharp for her age. I won't call her old. So, are you going to introduce us, sweetheart? Oh yes, Mom, this is Miss Gloria Ortiz. She is in a safe place because some dangerous people have threatened her. I couldn't think of any other way to help her. She lost her job and her home, and she and her kids need support. I put on my best helpless son look. Just then, Marilyn and Michael climbed out of the truck. Marilyn walked up to my mom and said, "Hi, I'm Marilyn Ortiz. I am 5 years old. What's your name?" Mom was very happy. Michael, however, came to me and seemed upset. "You're a cop? Are we in trouble? What did we do? What did my mom do?" That's when Gloria stepped in. "Michael Ortiz, mind your manners. That is not how to speak." She turned to my mom. "I'm sorry for my son's behavior. He is just very protective of us." Mom took charge. "He seems like a fine young man. You don't need to apologize." Bending down, she reached out her hand to Michael. "Hello, young man. I am Mrs. Stone. I am—" There was some confusion. "Who's Jonathan?" Mom paused for a second. "Oh, I mean Jack. You must know him as Jack. You are Jack's mom?" Gloria looked a bit surprised. "I am. Jack called and said he had a problem he couldn't solve. I hear you spoke to my daughter and son-in-law. They said nice things about you." Gloria turned her head to look at me. I looked away, pretending to admire the birds and trees. "I see why," Mom said with a hint of a smile. "Let's get you settled. Jack, help them with their things, young man," she said to Michael. "Come help with the luggage. Now, ladies." She held out her hands, guiding them into her home. Mike and I, being boys, grabbed the backpacks and luggage and made our way inside. I led Mike to the bedrooms, showing him what would be his room for a while, my old room, with bunk beds. He got excited when he saw the Star Wars posters and car pictures on the wall. My nephew Daniel Jr. used to sleep in this room when they visited. We moved some things around and took his dirty clothes to the laundry room. Then we took his mother's and sister's things to their rooms. The ladies were chatting, so I brought Mike to the family room. "How about a juice box?" His eyes got big. "I only get those at school." "Well, we're not at school, but if you don't tell, I can sneak you one." I went to the fridge and got a juice box and a Coke. By the time I came back to the family room, the ladies had joined us. Mom announced dinner plans for when Dad got home. Gloria took the two kids to the kitchen to help with their homework while she prepared dinner. I relaxed and made light conversation. It was a tough job, but someone had to do it. My homework with Marilyn was about colors and letters, while we focused on state names and simple math for Michael. As I said, I kept the small talk going. Dad came home around 5:30, and Mom and Gloria set the table. Dad was pleasantly surprised by our guests. Marilyn quickly warmed his heart, and even though Michael was shy, Dad switched to grandpa mode and soon talked to him like they were old friends. I was invited to stay for dinner, which was nice. After dessert, including apple pie and ice cream, we moved to the family room. Mom and Gloria sat on the couch, Dad relaxed in his chair, and I sat on the floor with the kids as we watched some silly show on TV. Eventually, Gloria took the kids to bed with some help from Mom, and I filled Dad in on what was happening with me. "So, son, how serious are you? Because she really likes you. I've noticed how she looks at you," Dad said. "Really, Dad? She barely answers me when we talk and thinks I'm looking for something. She's been through a lot emotionally, and I feel for her, but it's hard to connect with her like this. Why doesn't she seem to like me?" Dad chuckled at my words. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize you had such feelings for her. You want her to like you. You really do care for her. I'm proud of you, son. She seems like a good person, dedicated to her children, respectful, and clearly into you. It's like she has her first big crush. She's unsure and scared because she hasn't experienced this before. Just take your time." You know what you want. Let her come to you. I wondered if Dad was right. I could picture myself liking her, but did she feel the same? Just then, the ladies came back after putting the kids to bed, and Gloria sat with Mom on the sofa. She took Mom's hands to gather her thoughts. First of all, Mr. and Mrs. Stone, thank you for being so kind to my children and me, and for the wonderful dinner. We haven't had anything like it in ages. Also, thank you for raising such a nice guy as Jack. He has been such a help, she said, blushing a little. Don't let it go to your head, mister. I still think you're up to something, and I plan to find out what, Gloria added with a teasing smile. Wow, was Dad right? Mom covered her mouth, trying to hide a smile. What had they been talking about alone? Gloria continued. I want to stay long enough to find a job and a place for my kids and me. I will repay you for any expenses. I don't want to take charity. Mom replied, It's not charity, dear. You are our guests, and welcome to stay as long as you need. If we need to, we can ask our favorite policeman for help, she added with a grin as she looked at me, making me shift uncomfortably. Gloria glanced at me and smiled. She had been smiling more often lately. I stood up and said I needed to go home and get a good night's rest. We had important things to do tomorrow. She looked at me, surprised. You don't live here? No, I don't. I have a 2-bedroom apartment, but it wasn't big enough for you and the kids, so I thought this was the best option. Plus, how would it look? A single woman with her 2 children staying at a single man's place? That wouldn't be right, would it? For a moment, she looked completely puzzled. Then she got up and followed me to the door after I kissed my mom goodnight and shook my dad's hand, who had a cheeky grin. At the door, I told her I would come by tomorrow to take the kids to school with her, and then we could finish our errands to help get her life back in order. She stopped me by taking my hand, hesitated for a moment, then stood on her tiptoes and gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Thank you, Jack, she whispered softly. After that, she let go of my hand and hurried off toward her room, leaving me in shock. My parents stood in the family room smiling like kids, with my mom covering her cheeks and sniffling. Dad gave his thigh a light slap and whispered, That's my boy. I turned and went home, feeling amazed. Gloria sighed. She was confused. She had married her husband, Marcus Watson, during a difficult time and faced trouble from the start. She gave birth to little Michael, but felt she had to leave him. Marcus didn't show much care as his drug business grew, but he looked to her for support. Sadly, she got involved with one of Lucius's men, Rafael Santos, and the cycle of trouble continued. She suffered greatly and then found out she was expecting another child. When Marilyn came along, she managed to escape Rafael. She left the name blank on the birth certificate and planned to leave town when Rafael organized a trip to Chicago for his boss, hoping it would end badly for him. But things didn't go as planned. Watson ended up in a serious situation and was arrested. Law enforcement took down many wrongdoers. Rafael moved to California, and Gloria thought she was finally free. However, 5 years later, he returned looking for Gloria, trying to regroup his old gang and tie up loose ends. Then came Jack, her unexpected helper. She felt fortunate to have him in her life, though she would never tell him that it might boost his ego. He really was special. She changed into her nightgown a long cotton dress that reached her feet. It wasn't fancy, but it was comfortable, and only her kids had seen her wear it. She climbed into bed and turned off the bedside light. She slept peacefully, feeling safe. Back to Jack. Jack drove home, lost in his thoughts. He turned off the radio and focused on the road. He couldn't stop thinking about the day before. Gloria had shown such disregard for him, and then suddenly everything changed. He felt confused, realizing he liked her too. Maybe this was what she had been hinting at all along. Perhaps his dad was right. Maybe he really needed her. Gloria was what he had been missing to help him feel better, even if he hadn't realized it before. He parked in a new spot, out of the rain. He went inside, took a shower, and climbed into bed. In no time, he was asleep, dreaming of a small Latina woman who made him feel special. For the first time in a while, he felt a warmth inside. The next morning, Jack woke up feeling different. He couldn't shake the image of Gloria from his mind. He imagined her dancing in front of him. He laughed at his own thoughts. He got up, had a shower, brushed his teeth, tidied his hair, and made coffee. After filling his travel cup, He headed out to his truck. He arrived at his parents' house. His dad had already gone to work. The house was lively with activity. Gloria was busy packing lunches, while his mom rushed around making sure everyone was eating. "Hello?" he called as he walked in. "Uncle Jack!" Marilyn shouted, her mouth full of cereal. Michael grinned and gave a thumbs up while munching on an English muffin. Their mom came over to give him a hug and a kiss. He noticed Gloria smiling shyly and looking away. They were making progress. Once everyone finished up, they gathered their things. Jack kissed his mom goodbye. He saw Gloria press close to her and whisper, "Thank you," softly. That was interesting to see. They headed to the truck, and Michael helped buckle his sister in. Their mom and Jack joined them, and the kids cheered, pretending they were in a race. Jack chuckled, and Gloria shook her head as the kids giggled and bounced. On the way to school, things took an unexpected turn. Marilyn piped up, "Uncle Jack, are you going to be my dad?" I've never had a father before. I swear I saw a big deer darting across the road. That's why I swerved and almost drove into the ditch. I managed to stop just in time. Gloria looked pale and was breathing quickly. Michael was shaking but soon calmed down. "Awesome!" he shouted. "Are you all right?" Marilyn asked again. The big horse waited patiently. I turned to look at Marilyn's mom and then back at Marilyn. Why do you ask, Marilyn?" "Did someone say something?" I asked, glancing at her mother. Gloria, on the other hand, was staring ahead, trembling. She looked very pale. "Okay, I understand," I said. Then we headed back to school. When we arrived, the kids hopped out, hugged their mom, and ran off to find their friends. Marilyn saw two girls, one black and one white, and it looked like she was telling them all about her adventure from the past day. There was a lot of pointing and excitement before they dashed off to class. Michael joined three boys who were mimicking driving motions and pretending to brake with great exaggeration. The school bell rang, and as he turned to leave, he waved and hurried off. We headed to City Hall next. I looked at Gloria, who still seemed to be having trouble breathing. If we had been alone somewhere else, it might have felt different. "We need to talk," I said firmly. "What's going on?" she asked. She paused and gazed out the window, clearly lost in thought. She seemed to like whatever she was seeing outside. Maybe I should have someone take me for a drive so I could enjoy that view too. "Gloria, look at me." She turned to me, tears in her eyes. In a quiet, soft voice, she said, "I'm so sorry. You weren't supposed to hear that part." I sighed deeply. "Let's handle this situation first. We'll talk later." We reached the courthouse and went to the bail and parole section. We found Patrick Connor, Gloria's officer, at his busy desk. He got up and greeted us, signaling me to take a seat. "Jack, I know you. What can I do for you? Just so you know, Gloria isn't due for her check-in until tomorrow," he said. "I'm aware, Pat. I've got a lot on my plate this week. Gloria and the kids are in protective custody. She had to leave her job and move to a safe place. Here's the address. This is her lawyer," I added, handing him Daniel's card. "This is your brother-in-law. I know him." "Are you asking for favors for Gloria?" He chuckled. "Yes. Santos is back in town and is looking for her." "That's not good. You need to ensure she's safe," he said with a serious tone. "I'm arranging for extra support tonight. I might even get them a dog. Mom won't like that, but she'll come around. I'm impressed with what you're doing. I will stand up for Gloria and help her out if she needs it. Just look after her." He glanced at Gloria. "Good luck, kiddo, and stay out of trouble." He smiled as we stepped outside. "Okay, one done, two more to go. Let's talk to the next person." We drove to the state government annex and entered the Children Protective Services Bureau. CPS has a pretty low reputation in Texas, just above used car salesmen. Honestly, it is a tough job, often short on staff, low pay, and not much gratitude, but that's the way it is. Mrs. Gladys Moore was Gloria's caseworker. She was an older woman who had not been having good days lately. She did not look pleased to be interrupted. "What do you want, detective? I'm busy." "I understand, Mrs. Moore. I just wanted to check in about Gloria's situation." "What about it? She is on thin ice and she better stay out of trouble," she said, glaring at Gloria. Gloria looked upset and was about to respond when I gently took her arm and led her to a seat. Well, she is in protective custody and will be changing jobs to keep herself and her children safe. Mr. Rafael Santos is back and looking to hurt her. She has already been threatened, and we are taking steps to protect her family. We would greatly appreciate any assistance you and the agency could provide. Also, here is her lawyer's card. She is trying to have her conviction cleared. She is also changing jobs to keep her location and identity safe. We will keep you updated. Any questions, ma'am? I asked, looking directly at her, making my intentions clear. She seemed annoyed. There wasn't much she could do. She shot me a frustrated look. Is there anything else, Detective Stone? I think you've done enough. I smiled back at her. No, that's it. Thank you for your help. Oh, and please reach out to Miss Ortiz through her lawyer. You won't be able to find her otherwise. I smirked a little as I helped Gloria stand up, and we left, leaving Mrs. Moore to deal with her frustration. The dragon lady was not pleased. Gloria watched us leave in amazement. She seemed really excited. As we reached the parking lot, my phone rang. Hello? Yes, Daniel, how's it going? He did? That's great. We'll stop by later. No, we're fine. 2 down, 1 to go. I think Mrs. Moore might have a meltdown soon, but that's not my problem. Yes, I'll let her know. Thanks again. Bye. We hopped into the truck. Who is that? Asked Gloria. Your attorney. Dan sent one of his investigators with a notice about the lawsuit for unlawful termination. He also mentioned that they would contact the immigration and tax authorities about questionable business practices. Your former boss suddenly found your last paycheck, your W-2 form, and a severance check, saying they had made a mistake and hoped there were no hard feelings. He assured them they would be in touch. Let him worry for a bit, he said. Her eyes widened as she rushed to me, embracing me and giving me our first kiss. It was a surprising moment. I quickly wrapped my arms around her and kissed her back, almost forgetting what I wanted to say. Then she regained her composure, pulled back, and sat down, her face flushed, looking away shyly. I'm sorry. I don't know what just happened. I'm so embarrassed, she said, her voice soft. I replied with a straight face. I'm not. Want to do that again? I tried to look innocent, hoping she would say yes. She blushed deeper, then looked at me and burst into laughter. Leaning closer, she kissed me on the lips. Maybe later, she said with a playful smile. We headed to the county seat building to meet with the social services lady. We parked, got out, and went inside to find Miss Lori Malloy. Miss Malloy was young, about 24, and seemed quite cheerful. She had just finished college a year ago and was new to the job. Gloria was one of her first cases. When we entered, she stood up, smiling brightly. Hello, Gloria. I remember you. How can I help you? She was looking at me with a curious gaze. Gloria introduced me, saying, Lori, this is Detective Jack Stone from Conroe Police Department. We're here to talk to you. I jumped in to steer the conversation. We're here to discuss Gloria's situation as a single mother and her past convictions. She is currently under protective custody due to threats against her and her children. She has left her job, moved to a safe place, and plans to stay hidden for now. We want to ensure that no one can find her until things are settled, I added, handing her Daniel's business card. This is her lawyer's contact information. On the back, you'll find her civil lawyer. Mr. Williams is her criminal attorney. We are working to get her conviction overturned and cleared from her record. Meanwhile, she will keep attending her required parole meetings. Do you have any questions? During this time, she looked between Gloria and me. Let me see if I can find your file, Miss Ortiz. She started sifting through the files on her desk, all the while studying us. Her expression shifted from curious to more serious. Gloria was slowly calming down, but still eyed Lori with intensity as if she was on guard. Finally, she said, Oh, here we are. Yes, I understand your concerns, Detective. I'm glad to see you have a good lawyer on this. I can hold off on any questions until I hear from him. She looked up at us. Don't worry about anything. We stood up to leave, and as we opened the door, she added, Good luck and congratulations to both of you, with a big smile. I was surprised. Gloria had a pleased look on her face as we walked out of the building. We reached the parking lot and walked, hand in hand, to the Bronco. After we got in and I started the truck, my cell phone rang. Gloria finished buckling her seatbelt and I answered the call. This is Jack. Jack, it's Clint Wasser. I have some good news and some not-so-good news. Is your friend there? Does everyone know about us except us? I turned on the speaker and said, Yeah, Sarge, Gloria's right here. Put it on speaker. Okay, you're on speakerphone. What do you have? Well, her ex-husband was in the yard at Joliet, and someone attacked him. To make it short, he's gone. They caught 2 guys and got them to talk. They mentioned Santos ordered the hit. He's trying to take over the gang again. There is a big deal coming, and Watson has connections with a legitimate company to deal with it. They're still looking into it and reached out to us for any information. The bad news is we don't have much. Santos is still missing, and it's quiet about who he might be with or what they are doing. I understand, Clint. I'll keep an eye out. Thanks for the update. I hung up and turned to Gloria. She looked worried, but then relaxed a little. I can't say I'm upset about this. He was Michael's father, but Michael didn't know anything about him. What do you want to do? Should we tell him? She paused and then shook her head. No, he's too young and wouldn't understand everything about us, my marriage, or his father's death. I need to find someone good to be in his life, someone he can admire. She looked at me. Do you have any ideas? I smiled and shrugged. We could ask your daughter. She might have some thoughts. She frowned. Do you want to talk about this, Gloria? Obviously, someone has said something to someone. Then I took a chance. What have you and my mother discussed? I'm just curious. Maybe it concerns me. She began to tear up. Look, don't cry. Just talk to me. What do you want to share? I turned off the truck and faced her. She took a deep breath. When we were putting the kids to bed, I asked your mother if she had spoken with you about me. She said she hadn't had the chance. I asked if she knew your thoughts about having children. Do you want kids? How many? Would you be a good father? She said that all 3 of her sons would be excellent fathers in her view. Of course, she was your mother, so she might be a little biased. But of all of them, only one was ready to be a dad. Then she looked me in the eye and said, But I think he already knows who he wants to ask to be the mother of his children. She held my gaze and winked. I felt tears come, and she pulled me in for a hug. That's when the little one, who had been trying to stay quiet, spoke up. Is Jack gonna be our daddy? I love Jack and I need a daddy. I think he would be a great daddy. Can he, Mommy, please? By now she was crying again. Really crying. I reached over to comfort her, and she buried her face in my chest. Great. Now my shirt was getting wet, but I wouldn't let her go. Finally, I pulled her back and kissed her on the lips, then on her forehead. Let's go get your money. She wiped her eyes and blew her cute little nose as I started the truck, and we headed for the lawyer's office. By the time we arrived, she had calmed down and seemed to be thinking. I could almost see her mind working. At least she wasn't upset with me. We parked, got out, and holding hands like it was the most normal thing, we went inside. Mrs. Swanson welcomed us with a smile and said to head on back. We entered Daniel's office, where he greeted us with grins and handshakes. Guys, I'm glad you're here. We have a few surprises for you. With that, he handed Gloria an envelope with checks and her tax form. Don't lose that form, okay? You'll need it for your taxes next year. I also spoke to the ADA about the charges, and she thinks we can make a deal. We're set to go before Judge Morrison next Friday if we can sort it out. All the paperwork is ready. We just need a few signatures. Just then, Evie walked in, shook hands, and gave Gloria a hug. Miss Ortiz, I need you to come with me for a few minutes to talk. Oh. We'll let the boys be by themselves for a bit. Think you two can behave? Yes, dear, Daniel said. Gloria looked surprised, but got up and followed Evie. I was worried, but Daniel told me not to stress. It was just girl talk. Then he asked, What's going on with Gloria? Where are you two at? Is it serious? It sure looks like it, and you're not the kind of guy to play with her feelings, Jack. You're too good for that. She really cares for you. You might not see it, but everyone else does. So, have you told her how you feel yet? Wait a minute, I'm a police detective. How come I seem to be the only one not in the loop? We just started talking about it this afternoon. She was really ready. I'm still catching up. Uh-huh, my brother-in-law said. Listen, Jack, when you married Lauren, your sister, we all had serious doubts. We thought she was spoiled and not trustworthy. She flirted with everyone, but you didn't see it. You were in love, but we decided to stay silent. That was a big mistake. Why? What's wrong with Gloria? She's nice, a caring mother, strong, and seems very honest. Exactly. She is the opposite of your first wife. You should have seen her back then. You made a mistake then, and we can't let you make another mistake now and lose her. Do you get it? He nodded. His brother-in-law was right. What should I do? I really like her a lot. She is the best thing that has happened to me in over a year. I might even love her. But it's hard to get close to her. Sometimes she seems so distant. Daniel looked at Jack, whom he thought of as a younger brother. He could see the struggle and pain he felt. But now was the time for honest advice. Jack, if your brothers and dad were here, they would say the same thing I'm going to tell you. You need to step up. Talk to her and be clear about how you feel and what you want. You keep saying she doesn't know what you want. Just tell her. It's on you now. Just then, the girls came back in. Evie had a big smile, looking proud of herself. Gloria, however, looked surprised. Her expression reminded Jack of those charming cartoon characters with big eyes. Her mouth was slightly open as she took a deep breath. Evie guided her to a chair beside Jack, while she sat next to Daniel, crossing her ankles neatly and grinning even wider. Daniel noticed everything and smirked. Well, how did it go? He asked Evie. She shook her head and motioned to Gloria. So he turned to her and asked in a serious tone, Miss Ortiz, is everything okay? Jack thought, is everything okay? What just happened? Gloria seemed to come back to reality, and her gaze shifted to everyone, finally resting on Jack with a smile he cherished. She took a deep breath and said softly, I got a job. At first, Jack barely heard her, but then she said louder, I got a job. She jumped up and hugged him, showering him with kisses. Okay, so she likes him a little. Or maybe he was just the closest person around. A job. His lovely young friend has a job. She was speaking quickly, making it hard to understand. Evie giggled and told her, slow down, sweetheart. Then Evie explained, Gloria was offered a job as a junior office assistant. Typing, filing, and running errands to and from the courthouse kept her busy. She had taken a typing class in high school and did well. Being able to speak 2 languages was a big advantage. She was friendly, and according to her work history, always on time. Evie chuckled, saying she managed to get her old boss to give her a good recommendation. In return, we told him that no government offices were interested in his business, just a little leverage. And I will make $14, $50 an hour to start, 40 hours a week, she said happily. I smiled. That's great, dear. I'm really proud of you. She smiled back, took my hand, and kissed my fingers. Evie continued. She starts bright and early Monday morning. We talked to Mom, and she will take her shopping for work clothes tomorrow after you get back to work. Now go get your kids and take a break. You deserve it. We were surprised, left speechless. We stood up and thanked my sister and brother-in-law before heading out. When we got to the truck, I held the door for her like a gentleman should. I took a deep breath. I knew we needed to talk. But as I turned to Gloria, the need disappeared. She suddenly jumped on me, leaning over the console and kissing me. I couldn't help it, and soon we were both wrapped up in each other. Then she pulled back, breathing heavily, and said, And do you know what else was even better? No, but I have a feeling you will tell me. You called me, dear. You've never called me that before. She kissed me again, and then settled into my lap, breathing hard. I love you, Jonathan Stone. I'll spend my life showing you just how much. I'll never treat you badly like the other person did, and we won't talk about her again. You're mine from now on. I looked at her seriously. Not so fast. Her face changed from joy to shock in an instant. Maybe I had gone too far, but I wanted to be clear from the start. We were partners, and I needed her to know how I felt as well. At least now she was focused on me. I had seen how strong-willed she could be, and this was my moment. I looked her in the eye as I could see her pulling away emotionally. She was still sitting on my lap holding me tightly, but we were at a standstill. I began, Gloria, you are an incredible person. A woman who deserves respect. I've been trying to understand what you mean to me. Then I realized you are my everything. You complete me and make me whole. You just didn't know it. I didn't know it either. But I wasn't sure about you when it came to love. Then I realized that I had loved you ever since you yelled at me in the supermarket. I was just too blind to see it. We can thank someone for that. What I want to say is, Gloria Maria Sanchez Ortiz, will you marry me and be my wife? I will love you and care for you forever. But I never got to finish. I was so proud of what I had planned to say, but she interrupted me with a flurry of playful hits and kisses. After a moment, she paused, catching her breath. You scared me. I thought you were going to break up with me or say we should just be friends. Don't you ever do something like that again? Do you understand? I looked at her and replied, yes, dear. So is that a yes? She gave me that look. If you're married, you might know it. Then she went back to kissing me again with a lot of enthusiasm. Finally, she stopped to catch her breath. Okay, here are some rules. Since you scared me so much, we will wait until our wedding night to be together. I want a nice, small wedding in the church, and I want us to honeymoon in Bermuda. I've always wanted to go there. I also want at least 2 more kids. Is that clear? I decided to press further. Yes, dear, but you still haven't said yes or no. Again, she gave me that look. Then she kissed me again. When she finally pulled away, she smiled her best smile. Yes, sweetheart. With all my heart, yes. 1,000 times, yes. How about that? I guess so, I grinned. Thank you, she said happily, returning to her affectionate ways. It was getting a bit tricky for me, but I managed to break free from the embrace and start the truck. We were off to pick up her kids from school. We talked about engagement rings, but I told her I needed to sort a few things out first. As we drove to the school, we were mostly quiet, but Gloria kept glancing at me to make sure I was still there. Sometimes she would reach over to touch my arm or brush my cheek. At the traffic lights, she would lean over and kiss my cheek. She had a special way about her that made it hard for me to focus on driving. When we arrived at the school, we waited for the kids to come out. We talked and shared a few personal things about our lives. I told her that I couldn't wait to call her my wife, and she laughed, saying if I hadn't been so mean, she might have checked out my apartment before our wedding. But then she opened up, saying that as much as she wanted to be close to me, she wanted me to see her in a good light because of her past. She was still quiet about her past, even though he knew quite a bit. He told her he wanted to learn everything about her. It wouldn't change how he felt, but he wanted to avoid surprises. She thought for a moment and then nodded. Her parents had moved from Puerto Rico to New York. She was born in Brooklyn, but after some trouble with the law and gangs, her parents decided to move the family to Houston, Texas. She grew up there but fell in with a rough crowd. Sadly, her parents did too, and by age 16, she found herself alone, living on the streets. That was where she met Marcus Watson. He was tall and charming, and he swept her off her feet at a late-night club. With a little alcohol and some drugs, they ended up spending the night together. Eventually, she discovered she was pregnant, and they got married. But things turned sour when he mistreated her, and after a serious incident, she ran away and vanished. She stayed out of trouble until she had her child. When she tried to get a job, she ended up selling some drugs to make ends meet. Little Michael was only 3 years old when she got caught. They almost took her child, but he was safe with a friend. She faced minor charges and received probation instead of jail time, but now she had a record, and so here they were in life. I told her it didn't matter to me. Grinning, I shared some of my own mischief from school. I admitted I had cheated on a spelling test in grammar school. My best friend Louis and I had borrowed his parents' car for a joyride when we were 14 and got caught after hitting a mailbox. That led to 2 months of being grounded. Then at my high school prom, I got my hands on some beer and was caught for being under the influence. My parents were not happy at all. I was grounded for 4 months and barely left the house afterward. My mother and I went to church every Saturday. I was lost in thought, trying to remember more silly things from my youth. Finally, I looked at Gloria. She was staring at me, her eyes wide in surprise. Finally, she exclaimed, "That's it? That's the worst you could come up with?" Yeah. I was a pretty bad teenager," I replied. "Oh, come on, you're such a good kid. You're like a Boy Scout." She grinned widely, looking at me with amusement. "Thanks for trying to cheer me up. You're kind-hearted, but my life is what it is. I take it as it comes and do my best with what I have." She just looked at me. "You, on the other hand, are an absolute gem. You're too good to be true, Jack Stone. And you care enough to try to help me feel better about myself." She kept looking at me. "If I didn't love you before, I do now. You are truly the best thing that has ever happened to me." Her intense gaze made me anxious. I hoped I was good enough for her. Just then, the bell rang, and the doors opened to reveal a crowd of kids searching for their parents. We got out of the truck and walked toward the group, greeting the children. Marilyn held on to her mother tightly while Michael hugged her and gave her a kiss. Then he turned to me. "How's the truck running, Mr. Jack?" "It's running well, son. I take care of it." "It always looks like you do. My friends think it looks cool, sir." "Wow, now I'm sir. I guess I've earned some respect." He continued, "Mom, there are T-ball tryouts on Saturday. Can I try out?" By then, we were all inside the truck with our seatbelts on. I paid attention to their conversation, especially when Gloria seemed unsure. "I don't know, dear. Don't you think you're a little young for that?" I could see concern on her face, and the boy in the back seat looked really sad. I decided to help. "I was about his age when I tried out for T-ball, and it was a lot of fun." She turned to me. "But what about the cost? I don't know much about baseball, and he needs a haircut on Saturday." I glanced in the rearview mirror. He looked really upset. I took a bigger risk. "How about I take him? We can get his haircut, go to the tryouts, and do a few errands together. It will be a great way to bond. I know a good place for his haircut." She seemed uncertain. After all, I was a white guy, and her son had a nice afro, but I had a plan. My good friend Odell Thomas owned a barber shop. Gloria looked at me thinking it over. Meanwhile, Michael was eager. "Please, Mom. I get good grades, I have good reports from school, and I'm never in trouble. Please?" I added, "Please, Mom?" If looks could hurt. But she smiled and shook her head. She sighed and said, "All right, you can go. But I don't want anything unusual happening, understand?" We went home, stopping for pizza for dinner. Mom hugged her grandkids, "Not yet, but give me time," and set the table, saving some for my dad. We talked about the weekend and the upcoming tryouts. For T-ball, you put your name on a list and try different skills like throwing, catching, running the bases, and hitting. Then coaches choose players one by one until everyone is picked. It's mostly about popularity, with many dads selecting their own kids and their friends. On Friday, I had to take the sergeant's exam since there were upcoming openings, and if I was going to pop the question to Gloria, a little extra money couldn't hurt. I went home and started studying again, working late into the night. I had been preparing for over 2 months, even before I met Gloria, and my new feelings for her only made me more focused. On Friday morning, I went to work as usual. At 10 a.m., I signed out to take my test. After 4 hours, I finished and handed in my answers. Finally able to relax, I tried to catch up on my reports before clearing my desk for the weekend. I stopped by my parents' house to pick up Gloria, and then we headed to get the kids. On the way to the school, she asked me how my day was. I decided to mention the sergeant's exam I took that day. When I told her, she looked serious and turned to gaze out the window, lost in thought. I wondered if I had upset her. Then, without looking at me, she said, "I wish you had told me about that. I don't think we should keep secrets from each other." I almost made an excuse like it was no big deal or that I needed to take risks for my career, but something told me those words would sound empty, like something I would usually hear from someone else. Taking a breath, I replied, "You're right. I was just thinking about making more money for our future. I should have brought it up with you. I'm sorry. If I get a chance, I'll turn it down. I promise." She turned to face me. "You better not. My husband isn't one to back away from a challenge, and the father of my kids isn't either." Well, that was settled. I accepted her decision. I began to think about our future together. She was nothing like my previous partner. Gloria was strong and caring. I just needed to fit into that caring side. And what a spirited person she was. I was glad I didn't want to be on her bad side. She also had her moments of vulnerability, still figuring things out, but I liked that she would be my journey. I couldn't wait for what lay ahead. I smiled broadly at her. She caught my gaze. "What's so funny?" she asked. "You are. I love you." She mumbled something teasingly while looking out the window again, but a smile crept onto her face. I was getting better at this. Soon we reached the school and parked. 10 minutes later, the bell rang, and it was time for the kids to come out. Our two ran over, calling to their friends, "See you Monday!" and "Catch you at practice!" We helped them buckle up, and as Gloria and I settled in, we shouted, "Contact!" The kids mirrored us from the back seat, their voices echoing, and Gloria playfully responded, leading to more laughter and shrieks. My lady friend sighed and looked up, saying quietly, "Great, now I have 3 kids." We headed back to my parents' house and met Grandma there. Everyone washed up while I got ready to help with homework. When my dad arrived, we said a prayer and chatted about our day. Gloria was starting a new job on Monday, but most of the talk was about Marilyn going to a birthday party and Michael's first game. Then everyone started celebrating my news about taking the sergeant's exam. There were many congratulations and remarks about how it's about time. The best part was seeing my lady friend smile proudly while I felt a bit shy. I really loved her. After dinner, we sat around for a while. I finally said I needed to go home and get some rest for tomorrow's activities. She laughed and walked me to the front door, kissed me, said, "Thank you again, sweetheart," and sent me on my way. I drove home feeling very happy. Saturday morning was clear and cool. I woke up and headed to my parents' house. When I arrived, the place was bustling with people eating breakfast and looking for clothes. We got everyone settled, and Michael and I left with my parents cheering us on and his mom giving him a hug and kiss. Michael ran to the truck and hopped into the back, but quickly noticed his seat was missing. "Where's my seat, Jack?" he asked. "It's up here, buddy. I won't say anything if you don't. It might be easier to talk if you sit up front with me. Just buckle up and I'll drive carefully, okay?" He smiled, enjoying being a little rebellious, and I knew he trusted me to keep things safe. Once he was buckled in, he asked, "Where to first?" "First, I think we need something to drink. What do you think?" "A real drink?" he replied, excited. We were headed to the practice field and would pass McDonald's, so I decided to stop by the drive-thru. I turned to him and asked, "What were you expecting, a beer?" "Well, no, not really. But you said a drink, not just a Coke." As we moved up in line, I asked, "Ever had a frozen Coke?" He looked confused. "No, aren't all Cokes cold?" "Not cold, frozen," I explained. "No," he said, clearly curious. I thought, "You're in for a treat." When I reached the order screen, I asked for a large frozen Coke and a medium one. After paying, I pulled up to the second window. I took our drinks and passed the smaller one to Michael. He looked at it closely and asked, "What is this?" "Good stuff. I really like it. Just know that I'll never give you anything that isn't good. I'll try my best to offer you things I think taste great. Your mom might see it differently, though, so we can work on that. Now take a sip and let me know what you think." He looked at me as we drove onto the street. Hesitantly, he took a small sip, then a bigger one as his eyes widened. He turned to me, amazed. "Wow, this is fantastic." He kept sipping. "Slow down, buddy. Don't drink it all at once." I laughed. I felt like we were connecting. We arrived at the ball field, and he set down his half a full cup of Coke. I noticed a little boy with a plastic baseball glove, the kind you find in a discount store. "What do you have there?" The boy looked at his glove and then at me. "This is my glove. Mom got it for me about a year ago," he said, sounding a bit bored. I thought for a moment and then decided. "Here," I said, reaching under my seat to pull out my old baseball glove. My dad had given it to me when I was about his age. My dad gave me this. It's from a famous player who was his hero. "Who?" "I've never heard of him." I chuckled, thinking it was probably before his time. "Well, when we get home, you can look him up. He played for the Detroit Tigers, just like your school's mascot. That's why my dad got me this glove." He looked at the glove, then back at me, a little unsure. "Don't you think your cousin Daniel would want it?" "Nah, his dad got him a different model." His eyes lit up. "I've heard of him. He was really good a long time ago." I smiled, partly because he made me feel old. "So, can I keep it?" he asked. "If you want it." He stared at the glove, then looked at me. "Thanks, Dad." Oh, now he made me emotional. I reached out and hugged him. "We're getting there, kid," I thought. We headed to practice. The kids split into groups, working on throwing, catching, running, hitting, and stretching. They rotated through the drills while the coaches watched and took notes. There were also girls trying out, which was different from how it was when I played. The coaches then picked names until everyone was chosen. Michael got picked for the Tigers, which felt just right. He was so excited. He got a baseball cap with the Detroit Tigers logo, and I bought one for myself, his mother, his sister, and my parents. We all jumped into the truck wearing our new caps, and Michael was ecstatic. "Where to next, Jack?" he asked. "Getting a haircut," I replied. His smile turned into a grin. "Okay," he murmured. We drove to Odell's barber shop. Odell's had been there for many years, and he had owned it for about 8 years, giving it a fresh look. It was well known in the black community, and Odell was a familiar face. He had been a starting guard on my high school football team and had gone on to play at Texas A&M University, where he was thought to be a great future NFL player. Then an unseen force hurt his knee, and that changed everything. He completed his degree in business and became a skilled barber. He worked a lot in the community and had friends in sports, movies, and politics. We stepped out of the truck and entered the barber shop. 3 men were cutting hair and laughing, with jazz music playing softly in the background. 3 other men sat against the wall waiting their turn. Odell was styling a man's afro, facing away from us as we walked in. The conversation faded and everyone looked at us, leaving only the music. The atmosphere grew tense quickly, and it wasn't just the air conditioning. Odell turned around, looking a bit troubled. His expression changed when he saw Michael and me. A big smile spread across his face. "My man! Long time no see!" He approached me and gave me a warm hug. He pulled away and shook my hand, a hint of sadness in his smile. "I'm sorry to hear what happened to you, Jack. I wish her the worst," he said. Then he turned to Michael and asked, "What brings you here, little man?" "Odell, this is Michael Ortiz. His mother is a friend of mine. He wants a haircut but isn't sure what style he wants. I thought Texas's best barber could help him. Plus, being my good friend made it easier to come here." Michael was amazed and couldn't take his eyes off us. Beaming, Odell turned to his customers and the other barbers and announced, "This, gentleman, is my good friend Detective Jonathan Stone, the only white man on my wall of honor." He gestured to the pictures on the wall behind us. The customers and other barbers looked on in surprise. The wall was filled with many framed pictures, both black and white and in color. There were familiar faces like Emmitt Smith, Deion Sanders, Hakeem Olajuwon, Jim Brown, Neil deGrasse Tyson, and Michael Strahan from Houston. There was also Lester Holt from A Visit During a Hurricane, Senator Cory Booker, Congressman Benny Thompson, and several local politicians. Not to mention Mayor Sylvester Turner from Houston, Dwayne Johnson, Will Smith, and Kevin Hart. In the middle, there was a framed newspaper page from the Conroe Courier. It featured a picture of me as a smiling teenager holding a football while wearing a jersey with the number 24. Below the photo was a small wooden table with the football on it. This young man made the winning catch against the Woodlands Highlanders at our homecoming game 11 years ago. People shared memories saying things like, "I remember that," and "Great catch." My best friend Louis Vallone was the quarterback, and Odell had helped me make that catch. Meanwhile, Odell finished with his customer and helped Michael into the barber chair. A man sitting against the wall spoke up, saying he was next. Odell gestured to him and said, "Calm down, Lucius. This young man clearly could use a new look. Plus, I'll do yours for free. How about that?" Lucius laughed and replied, "I can accept that." Odell turned to Michael and asked, "So, what do you want today?" I moved over to sit beside Lucius. He smiled at me and offered his hand, which I shook before focusing on the upcoming haircut. "I'm not sure, sir. I just want something different. My mom usually took me to get my haircut or did it herself. I just want to change." He paused and added, "But I don't want to upset her either." This made everyone chuckle. Then Odell asked a surprising question. "What does your dad think?" Michael looked at me, confused, and asked, "What do you think, Jack?" The room fell silent. Even the music seemed to pause. Odell stared at me in surprise. "Dad?" he mouthed. I sat up straight, trying not to blush. "I'm working on that, Odell. Let's find a middle ground and I'll deal with the rest, all right?" The chatter started again, with Odell still looking at me. He then turned back to Michael and said, "I have an idea." He walked to the counter, picked up a binder, and began flipping through it. He found something and showed it to Michael. "What do you think of this?" The boy's eyes lit up and he exclaimed, "Cool." He was looking at a picture of Patrick Mahomes, the quarterback. I thought it would suit him well and give him some flair. "Go for it if that's what you want. If it doesn't work out, you can stay in my truck until it grows back and we can talk to your mom again," I joked. Odell laughed and said not to worry. Everyone liked this look. He began to work and the sound of the razor filled the air. While he cut Michael's hair, I moved to the other side. "Do you know a man named Rafael Santos?" I asked quietly. Without pausing his work, Odell replied, "Not a good guy, Jack. I've had to kick him out a few times for causing trouble in my area. I talked to Clint in narcotics about him, and they're trying to find a way to stop him. I also know someone in the state police, Sergeant Joseph Lapierre. He mentioned the feds are interested too, so I feel secure. What do you know?" He glanced at me. "This guy is trying to reach Michael's mom, him, and his little sister. I can't stand that. I want to help put a stop to it." Now I had Odell's full attention. Wow, this must be a serious situation. I think it is. And the young guy believes I could be a father figure. We just came from t-ball practice. I had one more stop to make to get some nice jewelry for the ladies. I smiled as I said this. Odell smiled back at me and laughed. "You clever guy. It's about time you felt better." He finished cutting Michael's hair and took the towel off his shoulders. "There you go, young man. What do you think?" He held up a mirror to show Mike the back and sides. The boy beamed. "Cool," he said excitedly. I had to admit he looked good and more confident. I was proud of him. I thanked Odell and offered to pay, but he waved me off, saying it was his pleasure. He shook my hand again and added, "Don't be a stranger, Jack. Bring him back for the next cut, and I'll let his dad handle the payment." He chuckled. "Good luck, my friend. You deserve it." We said our goodbyes to the other men and left. "Where are we heading now, Jack?" Michael asked. "We need to visit another friend of mine to talk about getting your mom a car," I replied. We drove to Vallone Automotive. Louis Vallone was my best friend. We had been close since before high school. My dad called us running partners because we were always together and often in trouble, like most boys. He stood by my side as my best man at my wedding, despite Lauren not wanting him there because she thought he wasn't fancy enough for her wedding party. I should have realized then how focused she was on appearances. Louis was married to a local girl who wasn't Italian, and they had 3 children. I often felt envious. His parents adored her so much that they told her she could live with them if things ever went wrong. He would have to find another place to stay. He was their firstborn. After high school, he served 2 years in the Army and then went to technical school to earn his certification. With some help from his dad, who was a banker, he started his own repair shop. He worked really hard and married his childhood sweetheart, the girl he met in church. They were happy together. She worked as his receptionist and bookkeeper, and their business thrived. I often felt jealous. I was the godfather of their oldest child, a little girl who had just turned 9. We arrived at the shop and walked into the neat reception area. There was Mary Vallone, and she lit up when she saw me. She rushed over. "Jack, oh my goodness, you look great. How have you been? We were so worried about you. Louis said you almost disappeared when that woman hurt you. I was so sorry to hear that." Then she noticed Michael. "Oh, hello." She turned back to me. "And who is this?" she asked softly. I smiled at her slight embarrassment. "Mary, let me introduce Mr. Michael Ortiz. He is my protege," I said proudly. "Michael, this is Mrs. Louis Vallone, my very dear friend. Mary is my best friend's wife and the mother of my goddaughter." She bent down and smiled at Michael, who was shyly holding out his hand. "Nice to meet you, ma'am," he said quietly. I chuckled, and Mary looked at me before pulling Michael into a big hug. After squeezing him gently, she stood up and turned to us. "I'm guessing you've been busy, Jack. There's a story here, and I want to hear it." "Oh, you will, Mare, I promise," I said. She smirked and went to grab the microphone. "Louis, come here right now." I laughed and told Michael to sit down for a moment. Mary squeezed my arm, and Michael picked up a truck magazine to read. So tell me about this young man. How do you know him? What brings him here? She asked. His mother is someone I'm interested in getting to know better. She's the one I should have married instead of Lauren. Huh, anyone would be a better choice than her, Mary replied, a little annoyed. How do you really feel, Mare? Speak your mind, Michael said, grinning. I'm sorry, Jack. We all thought Lauren was quite the character, but you were so in love with her. I felt bad for you. Louis was really upset and talked to himself for days. He wanted to confront her, but I reminded him that it would reflect poorly on you. He calmed down but wasn't sure what to do. It sounds like you figured it out all on your own, she smiled. Just then, my best friend Louis walked out of the workshop, wiping his hands on a rag and holding a hammer. Did that troublemaker Santos show up again? Call Clint or try to reach Jack? I smiled. At your service, buddy. He rushed over to hug me, then shook my hand enthusiastically. How are you? I haven't seen you in ages. Mary, what's he doing here? Mary shrugged and glanced at Michael, who was still reading. Louis turned to look at him, then back at me. Who is that? He whispered. I was having a great time teasing my closest friend. I don't know. I found him at t-ball practice, and he followed me home. Can I keep him? I asked Mary, pretending to be serious. Jack! She squealed. I laughed and turned to Michael, who realized he was part of the conversation. I gestured for him to come over, and when he did, I placed my hand on his shoulder. Louis Vallone, meet Master Michael Ortiz. He's my sidekick and running partner. I'm trying to keep him out of trouble. I leaned in closer and whispered, Actually, I think his mother sent him with me to keep me out of trouble. Michael looked at me with wide eyes and swallowed hard. Michael, this is my very best friend in the whole world. This is Louis Vallone. To his credit, Louis knelt down and offered his hand. Any friend of Jack's is a friend of mine. Shake, pal. Michael seemed unsure. Being welcomed by a nice lady was one thing, but a guy like Jack was new territory for him. He studied Louis and then looked at Jack. Is he really a best friend, Dad? Louis's jaw dropped, and he sank to the floor on his knees, surprised. Louis was one of the most honest people I knew, and he would never judge anyone, but in this case, the situation was complicated. He turned to look at Jack. Dad, he silently mouthed. It was time to clear things up. Michael's mother brings me so much joy. I admire her and her little daughter along with Michael. I plan to ask her to marry me, and I hope she will say yes. If not, I'm not sure what I'll do, but I believe she will. After this, we're going ring shopping, then I'm going home to propose. I'm also here to talk about a car for Gloria. Plus, I smiled, I need another best man performance. Louis looked shocked, almost ready to faint, then turned to face Michael. You know what you're getting into with this guy, Michael, right? He's quite the character. He reached out his hand again and added, and I think he will make a great dad. Michael was taken aback but reached out to shake Louis's hand, then broke into a smile. He turned to Jack. I like him, Jack. He's just like you. That's good, son, because he's going to be a big part of our lives from now on, along with Mary. So you better like them. Mary became emotional and started to cry as Louis got up with a big smile. He was still grinning when he hugged me and shook my hand. So what kind of car do you have in mind for her? Louis asked. Something reliable, economical, not too flashy, and within my budget, I replied. Louis looked at Mary, and they exchanged a look before saying together, the Explorer. I raised an eyebrow and asked, Okay, what's great about the Explorer? Louis explained, I got it at a police auction. It's an older fleet vehicle, white, plain, automatic, with AM/FM radio, air conditioning, and there's even a cassette player installed. The car had a black interior and fabric seats. It was 10 years old and had high mileage, about 137,000 miles. I had just put in a new battery. He laughed. We fixed up the exterior and cleaned the inside really well. My friend just finished the repairs and a fresh coat of paint. It looks pretty decent, I said. Mary noticed my surprise and smiled as she added, There weren't too many damages, Jack. I tell you what, sign over the title for the Toyota, and we'll get it registered and ready on Tuesday. It'll be a straight swap. Come on, let's take a look. We walked over to the shop area and waved at some of the guys I recognized. Louis called out to Harold, who was working on a car. Hey, Harry, where's the Explorer? Louis asked. Mark's washing it. "The paint looks good, boss." "Hey, Jack, how's everything?" Harold replied. Harry was another friend from school. He joined the Marines after high school, and when he returned, Louis gave him a job. Friends help each other out. As we went outside to check the car, it was plain and clean, just what I wanted. Louis got in and started it up. It ran quietly and smoothly. Mary came over and squeezed my arm. "This is a wedding gift for you two," Mary said. "If you don't end up getting married, I'll make you buy it," Louis joked. "We'll bring it over Tuesday because we care about you, Jack." I was speechless. I wiped my eyes and looked at Mary. Louis came closer and put his hand on my shoulder. I hugged Mary and shook Louis's hand. Mike, who was nearby, commented on how nice it was what they were doing for us. Mary hugged him again while Louis playfully messed up his hair. After we took our leave, I made them promise to come over on Tuesday evening to hang out. "Where to now, Jack?" Michael asked eagerly, looking for his own missing piece of family. "Well, we've got one more stop. I need to get a ring for your mother. It's always good to get nice things for the special women in your life. Remember that. It will be helpful in the future." "What do you mean, women? How can you have more than one special girl?" he questioned. "I have several special girls. My second favorite is probably my mom. Third is my Bronco. Then there's my sister and Mary Valone," I explained. Michael laughed. "Your Bronco is your third favorite girl? It's just a truck, Jack." I looked at him, pretending to be shocked, and decided to share a little more. "I think you might understand how tough things were for me before I met your mother. My Bronco was the only thing that was really there for me, dependable and true. It may sound silly, but those qualities are important to a man." I paused, feeling a bit silly for saying that. "Then you must have important women in your life." "I have a lot of special people in my life. But now there's one more who is the most important." "My number one favorite girl," I said. Michael thought for a moment. "My mom," he guessed. I couldn't hide anything from him. I need to find something for my number one girl to show her how much she means to me. That's where we're headed now. He pondered for a second. "What did you do for your mom to show her what she means to you?" "That's simple. I'm hoping to give her 2 more wonderful grandchildren." I glanced at him out of the corner of my eye. He wasn't fully focused on what we were talking about, but suddenly, his eyes brightened. "Marilyn and me? You mean us?" Let me think. "Yeah, I suppose that's true." I smiled. He looked amazed. It took him a moment to connect the dots, but he was starting to get it. "That means I'll be your son." "For real?" he exclaimed, tears welling up in his eyes. "Yes, son," I replied gently. He rushed over to me and hugged me tightly, full of joy. I noticed his family often showed affection this way. We continued on to Na's Jewelers. Frank Na and his brother Martin were friends of mine. Their father had handed down the successful jewelry store to them after retiring to Florida. The brothers were running a good business, and I planned to support them a bit more. We parked out front and were about to go in when I noticed something wasn't right. A black Chevy Suburban was parked too close to the entrance. I quickly took out my phone and called for help. 911 police, fire, or ambulance? The operator answered. "This is Detective Jonathan Stone, badge 564. I'm at Na's Jewelry on 336 North. There is a robbery happening. 2 Hispanic males are in the store. There's a black Chevy Suburban out front with at least 1 driver. There appear to be 3 customers inside and about 2 employees. Please send help right away." "Understood, Detective. Units are on the way," the operator replied. I shifted into protective mode. "Michael, listen carefully and do exactly what I say. Get out of the truck, go around the back and across the parking lot, climb over the low wall to the Pep Boys tire shop and go inside. Ask for Jethro. Tell him Jack Stone said to call 911 about the robbery at the jewelry store. Then stay inside, behind the counter. Do you understand?" Terror filled Michael's eyes. "Yes, sir. Be careful, Dad. I love you." "Wow. I love you too, son." I might not get another chance to say that to him. He jumped out and ran to the tire store. I knew Jethro well, and he kept a shotgun hidden behind the counter, so I knew Michael would be safe. Turning back to the jewelry store, I thought hard about my next move. I took out my phone and snapped a picture of the Suburban and its license plate, just in case. I carefully backed the Bronco up a few feet. I switched to low gear. I didn't have four-wheel drive, but I didn't think it would be necessary. I checked my seatbelt and took a deep breath. Then two people came out of the store. One got in the front seat and the other got in the back. The driver tossed his cigarette out the window and started to shift into drive, but the Bronco moved faster. I sped up to about 15 miles per hour and hit the side of the Suburban, damaging the front of my vehicle. My bumper took the hardest hit. I released my seatbelt and jumped out, ready for anything. At 28, I wasn't as quick as I used to be. I felt a slight pain in my leg, but it was nothing compared to what the other guys were facing. Steam and smoke were coming from the Chevy's hood. I took a quick look at my Bronco. It wasn't too bad. I walked around and pointed my weapon at the driver. "Police! Hands in the air!" It turned out to be unnecessary. The airbags had deployed and the driver was unconscious with a cut on his forehead. Jethro was already out of his car with his shotgun, kneeling behind the trunk. I shouted at the dazed driver, "Get out of the car! Hands in the air! Face down on the ground!" I helped him out of the truck, just as a couple of police cars arrived. I turned to the back seat and told the person there to put his hands up. He was shocked and didn't resist. I pulled him out and handcuffed him, taking the revolver he had and putting it in an evidence bag. Officers Smith and Jones were handling the others while more officers secured the area. Then Michael ran up to me. Jethro smiled and said, "That's one tough friend you have, Jack." He put his shotgun away and chatted with the other officers. It turned out the three were part of a gang and were told to find a way to get money for their next plans. But that would all come out later. For now, Jack gave his statement, and he and Michael went to talk to the Nah brothers. Frank came out from behind the counter and thanked Jack for stopping the robbery. Martin smiled and said it was good to have friends in low places. Jack laughed and replied to Martin, "The feeling is mutual, buddy." "So what brings you here, Jack?" Frank asked. "My friend and I said, nodding to Michael, "are looking for an engagement ring. I'm going to ask his mother to marry me." Frank and Martin cheered. "Congratulations, man. We heard what happened between you and Lauren. Nobody should go through that, my friend." They looked at one another and nodded. "Here's an idea we can get you a friendship ring. Then you can go home, propose, and bring her back to pick out the best ring. What do you think?" I glanced at Michael. "What do you think, buddy? Do you think your mom will like that?" "She'll love this idea, Jack. You want to make her happy, right?" I thought about it and realized he was right. I turned to my friends and said, "Sounds good, guys." They took me to a display of beautiful rings. They weren't engagement rings, but they were still nice. Michael and I decided on a gold band with a small blue sapphire, a small pink sapphire, and a larger diamond in the center. He thought it could even work as an engagement ring. "Do you have that in size 6.5? "Absolutely, Jack. Bring it back and we can resize it if needed." We made a deal, and they were grateful for my help in stopping the robbery. They boxed it up, and Michael and I headed home. After the investigation team finished their work, I moved the Bronco out of the way. I stood there looking at my truck. The bumper was badly bent, the front guard was damaged, and the grille was dented. Thankfully, I had never added a winch. It was mostly just cosmetic damage, though expensive. Mechanically, the truck was fine and still running well. We drove home, and I reminded Mike not to tell his mother anything about the robbery until we could explain it properly. As we got to the house, I gathered the extra caps and the ring, and we went inside. Before we could get settled, Michael shouted, "Mom! Mom! You should have been there! Dad stopped a robbery and caught 3 men. At least he got the facts right. Gloria looked confused. This is my moment, I thought. I pulled out the box and knelt down. "Gloria Ortiz, will you honor me by becoming my wife?" But she was quicker than I expected. "Wait a second, Jack. What about this robbery? With my son in your truck? And you stopped 3 men? Just like that?" I could see she was getting angry. I had to think fast. I looked at Michael and he realized he had made a mistake. Mom was not happy. I took a deep breath and stood tall. If I was facing trouble, I would face it bravely. I gathered my thoughts. Gloria was ready to unleash her frustration on me. She was upset, and I knew she was coming for me. But I hadn't done anything wrong. I had done my job. I kept Michael safe and handled the situation like I was supposed to. Isn't that what a good cop and father is supposed to do? She let her feelings out in a rush. You're meant to be someone my son can count on, and you're acting like a cowboy with his safety. What is wrong with you? My mom and dad looked at me, waiting to see how I would respond. She was really angry. She had a fire in her eyes. I had reached my limit. I cared for her deeply, but I had to speak up. I met her gaze and she could see that she had messed up, but didn't fully realize it, so I shared my feelings. I've had enough. I care about you so much and would do anything for you. In fact, I already have. I helped you and your kids with food, found you a safe place, got you the best lawyers, helped you get your back pay, took care of your son because you both mattered to me. I even found you a car. You got me a car? She whispered. She was trying to understand my anger. Normally I was calm and she was intense. But now, the tables had turned. Yes, Gloria, I got you a car, but I guess you expected that. All women are the same. My first wife was just like this. I made sure Michael was safe and sent him to a place where he would be cared for. Only after that could I focus on my job. I knew my son was safe, along with my future wife and daughter. Then I did what I had to do, just like you said you admired about me. I can't change who I am, and maybe that's why people take advantage of me. I let them walk over me. I didn't mind when you did it, Gloria, because I loved you so much. I lowered my voice, just like I loved Lauren. But not anymore. This is where it ends. As I spoke, my parents stood in shock. They had never seen or heard me like this before, especially not around Gloria and her kids. Michael was trembling with fear, and Marilyn was curled up on the couch, holding her fist. Gloria seemed taken aback. Then she realized what she had done. She had slipped into protective mom mode, something she had always done alone. She had hurt the man she loved in front of his family and hers. "Oh no, what have I done?" she thought. She began to cry, dropped to her knees, and hugged my legs tightly. "Oh, Jack, I'm such a fool. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me. I know you would never hurt my children. I was just so shocked and scared." I looked down at her and I softened. I know, I can be a softie. I looked at her, took her hands and lifted her up so she could face me. Our children, Gloria. Our children. I'm upset and disappointed, but I still love you more than anything. You are strong, I smiled, and I feel I need to help guide that strength. I turned to Michael and gave him a serious look, my version of a dad look. He blushed and looked down. Then I turned to Marilyn, bent down, and picked her up in my arms. "Don't worry, sweetie, it's just a disagreement. I'm sure your mom and I will have a few of those after we're married, but we'll work it out." "I'm still going to be your daddy." Marilyn got really emotional, crying and burying her head in my chest. Gloria ran to my mother, crying as well. Mom wrapped her arms around Gloria and looked at me. Dad smiled and nodded at me. I held my lady and my little girl close and turned to Michael. He looked a bit unsure about the evening ahead. I sighed and motioned for him to come over. He slowly walked toward us, and I pulled him into our group hug. I kissed his head and looked down at him. "We'll chat later, just you and me, okay?" He looked relieved. "Yes, sir. I got you." Now, where was I? Oh, right. I let everyone go and dropped to my knees again. "Ahem, Gloria Ortiz. Will you and your children do me the honor of marrying me?" She looked at the beautiful ring in surprise, then into my eyes. "Are you sure you still want us after how I treated you?" I gathered all my strength. "Absolutely, sweetheart. You mean everything to me. We might have some things to discuss, but I believe we can work it out." She looked so happy and said yes. She held out her left hand, and I smiled at the kids as I slipped the ring on. It fit just right. I hugged her and kissed her. We made up a bit, and my mother hugged her and spoke with her. I handed out some caps, and Michael talked about his tryouts and his new haircut. My dad joked that he looked like a famous player. We had a very emotional weekend and went to church on Sunday. Monday was her first day at work, and she felt nervous. But Evie came to help her get settled in. When she came home that evening, she couldn't stop talking. She shared how kind everyone was and how interesting the work felt. Evie smiled and said Gloria made a wonderful first impression. She picked up her tasks quickly and was on her way to being part of the team. Tuesday was similar, though she was a bit calmer at dinner. That changed when Louie and Mary arrived. She was shy at first, but then Mary hugged her, checked her out, and turned to me saying, "You did good, Jack. Real good." Louie hugged her and said, "Welcome to the family." She started to cry. Then we took her out to show her the car. She gasped and began to cry again. The rest of the evening was wonderful. We made plans to talk to a friend of my mom's, a therapist she had seen long ago. The lady was also a mother. Then we started seeing Father Philip at Sacred Heart Church because Gloria wanted a church wedding. I wanted to make her happy, so I was ready to do whatever it took. We went to apply for passports. She dreamed of a honeymoon in Bermuda. That sounded good to me. My wife in a swimsuit would be nice anywhere. But the government had a waiting list. So I booked a week in Corpus Christi at a charming little bed and breakfast and promised her we would go to Bermuda for our first anniversary. I also reserved the presidential suite at a hotel at the airport. It was on the top floor with 3 rooms. I only needed one, but it was for Gloria. Grandma and Grandpa agreed to take care of the kids. Mom, my sister, and Mary came together to support Gloria. We attended counseling sessions and pre-marriage talks with Father Philip to strengthen our relationship. Gloria understood that she had to let go of some of her strong feelings of needing to protect herself and her kids. We were a team now, and I would always be there for her. She had family now. I realized I had some hidden feelings about women because of my past. I didn't think Gloria was like that, but sometimes I felt unsure. We argued a few times, but always ended up making up with tears, mostly from Gloria. Over the months, those tears became less frequent. I didn't want to break Gloria's spirit, and I loved her strong personality. When I shared this with the therapist, she understood and agreed it was a good part of who Gloria was. Mom and the girls, Evie and Mary, took charge of planning the wedding. They found a wedding dress that Gloria loved. The details started coming together. Mary had a friend with a printing company who helped with invitations and programs. We gathered all the necessary papers and made arrangements. A date was set, and we booked the church hall for the reception. In 6 months, we would be married on February 14th, Valentine's Day. It would be easy to remember. Evie would be her matron of honor, Mary would be a bridesmaid, and one new friend from work and a young lady from church would join too. We planned to have 2 junior bridesmaids, guess who? Louis would be my best man, and my brothers and brother-in-law would be groomsmen. Michael and Daniel Jr. would walk their grandmother down the aisle, and Gloria asked my father to give her away. He was thrilled, and even offered to help with some of the costs. I took Michael out for some time just for the 2 of us. We had a serious conversation. "Mike," I began, "when we get married, it's going to be you and me against your mom and sister. I care for them deeply, and I care for you just as much. But as guys, we need to support each other, or we might find ourselves in trouble." I smiled at him. He looked scared. "I never want you to lie to me or your mother. Always tell the truth. It might be hard or even mean a consequence for you, but the truth is very important. I won't accept anything less. Is that clear?" He gulped and nodded. "Yes, sir." "Now, remember the day we came home from t-ball practice? I asked you not to say anything about what happened. Do you remember?" He turned red and seemed to understand where this was leading. He lowered his eyes and nodded quietly. Then he looked up, and I could see he was about to cry. It was time to resolve this. "I'm sorry, Jack. I was really excited and didn't think about how your mom would react." We were sitting on a bench in the park, enjoying frozen drinks. I put my arm around him and gave him a comforting hug. I pulled back and looked him in the eyes. "I will always be on your side. Even if you make a mistake, I will support you. Even if you face punishment, being honest is always best. I won't accept anything else. Do you understand? Your mom was really upset with me," I said with a smile. Michael chuckled a bit and wiped his eyes. "She was pretty mad, wasn't she?" "That's putting it mildly. I understand why. She was worried about you. I would never do anything to put you in danger. I would protect you first. Do you get me?" "I'm sorry, Jack." He was now crying. "I don't want to lose you now that you're in my life." I reached out and hugged him again. My dad has a special way of talking to me. He rarely uses my name, but he calls me son often. I ruffled his hair and said, son. I looked at him. You and me, son, all right? Can I call you Dad? He asked shyly. I smiled. Of course you can. We made up and discussed our new family. He would be the oldest and would have some challenges because of that. But I believed in him, and I was sure he could deal with it. I was the youngest, so I don't know everything you will face, but you have two uncles to guide you, and if you listen to them, you will be fine. Just don't imitate them too closely, okay? He sniffed and agreed. Now, your mom and I might have more children. They would be your little brothers and sisters, depending on what they are. No puppies, only siblings. He laughed and said he understood. But could we get a puppy anyway? I said we could think about it together. When we got home, Gloria had a lot of questions for me. I told her I had made up with Michael and everything was good between us. I didn't tell her I was trying to form a support team. Guys have to look out for each other. If she found out I kept a secret from her, even a small one, it could lead to trouble for me. Still, I decided to take the chance. I had a good relationship with my landlord. I spoke to him about changing my lease from a 2-bedroom to a 3-bedroom apartment. It would cost a little more, but I agreed to sign a 1-year extension. He was okay with that, and we planned to move while we were on our honeymoon. My brothers and friends would help with the move and set up the kids' bedrooms, along with my parents. I just needed to get rid of some old magazines and stuff. You know how it is when you're single. We made plans for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Then I got some great news. The night before Thanksgiving, they announced the sergeant's list, and I secured spot number 3. The next piece of good news came just before Christmas. Clint Wasser's boss, Lieutenant Doug Freeman, had retired, and Clint moved up to lieutenant. This opened a position in the narcotics unit, so I quickly applied and texted Gloria to invite her to lunch. I had to share my news with her because I needed her support. At noon, I went to the law office to pick up Gloria, and we headed to a cozy Mexican restaurant. Hey, I only have 45 minutes. What's the big news? She asked. I explained everything. I told her I had applied, but it was just a formality. I could still change my mind, and it wouldn't hurt my chances. At least I was on the list. More importantly, I'm talking to you. If you don't think it's a good move, I won't go for it. It's our decision. She looked at me, and then her eyes welled up with tears. You remembered, she said softly. Always, sweetheart. No more secrets. Well, maybe tiny ones. She paused for a moment. If this is what you want, then we will go for it. I know it might be risky, but you're a police officer, and I believe you'll be careful. You will, right? Because if you're not, you're in big trouble, Jack Stone. That seemed to settle the matter. I leaned over and gave her a kiss and casually asked how her day was going. Don't you try to change the subject, Sneaky. You better be careful, she replied with a smile. After lunch, I kissed her again. I was really looking forward to Valentine's Day. Later that day at work, Lieutenant Clint Wasser came by. He sat down in an empty chair and smiled at me. How was lunch? He chuckled. In a small office like ours, nothing stays hidden for long. Not bad. I didn't have a margarita, but I still found a way to enjoy dessert, I joked. He laughed again. I bet you did. Is she on board with this? He asked. Yeah, she knows I'll do a good job, and she wants me to be happy. That's not what I meant, he said, suddenly looking serious. Does she realize what this could involve? It could open up a lot of trouble for both of you. This is about drugs. The people we deal with are really bad. And... He paused for a moment. There's something you should know. Intelligence shows that Santos and his group are connected to the advertising company your ex works for. They're also linked to a local trucking business. He looked directly at me. Plus, your ex has been involved with more than just the person she left you for. There are reports saying she is close to several key members of the gang. When we take them down, is that going to be an issue for you? I was surprisingly calm about what he said. I thought briefly about it. I realized that the lack of feelings can sometimes be more intense than hate. That's where I was at the moment. As long as I can be part of it, I will do my job the same way I always have, legally and fairly, without any bad intentions. I paused. I might feel a little satisfaction from this, but I know some have called me unusual before. I chuckled lightly. He looked at me and then smiled. That's all I needed to hear. Welcome to narcotics. You start after the new year. I went home and shared the news about my promotion and transfer with everyone. Gloria and I took a drive, and I begged her to keep what Clint had told me a secret. Don't tell anyone. He trusted me with this information to make sure I understood the importance of the situation. But I believe I can handle this job, and maybe it will help me feel better about the past. Gloria looked at me and laughed lightly. I always thought you had a bit of a wild side, Jack Stone. Then she became serious. I don't want this to change you, my dear. I don't want it to change us. Are you really sure? Yes, my love, very sure. I see it as a step forward in my career and our life and a way to find closure for myself. I'm sure, sweetheart. She gazed into my eyes and kissed me. It was a kiss full of promise. I can't wait for our wedding day, she said softly. Well, we don't have to rush, I replied gently. She laughed and lightly swatted my hand. Easy there. Be patient. It will be worth it, I promise. Then you can spend the rest of your life getting to know me, she said with a playful look. I smiled back at her. Not a chance, beautiful. Not a chance. Christmas passed, followed by a sweet moment on New Year's Eve. We almost crossed a line, but she was stronger than I expected, thankfully. After that, I realized that she wanted to take things slow. I was a little confused, but I figured maybe she was just trying to resist my charm. Whatever the case, her kisses were still full of fire, and I was grateful for that. I began my new role on Clint's team and got formally briefed about Mr. Santos and his activities. It turned out there was a lot more to it than I had been told. The advertising agency was closely linked to a growing gang. The state police, the FBI, and the DEA were all involved in the case, along with the ICC because of the trucking company's role. We had already turned several lower-level employees from the trucking company and gained insight into many daily decisions being made. Valentine's Day began clear and slightly cool, but it was beautiful. It was the perfect day for a wedding, a fresh start, and an end to a tough time in our lives. I put on my tuxedo with help from my brother-in-law, and my best friend. Honestly, they seemed more nervous than I was. My brothers kept telling me that I didn't deserve this amazing woman. She was too good for me. My brother-in-law kept assuring me everything would be fine, or else Evie would be upset with him. Louis simply said, "Don't mess this up, Jack. Who's the one getting married here, me or them?" No pressure. We arrived at the church. I was still calm, but the guys were getting anxious. It was time. All right, I admit it, I'm just a guy. Tough. We stepped out to the altar area. We wandered around, and as usual, the bride was running late. Then, 10 minutes after the scheduled start time, the organ began to play. My soon-to-be son and my lively nephew walked my teary-eyed mother down the aisle. Despite being told to maintain a serious expression, they kept giggling and having fun. It was cute. Next, the 2 junior bridesmaids walked down the aisle, beaming with joy. They were followed by the bridesmaids, including the bride's matron, Mary, and the matron of honor, Evie. Each woman looked beautiful in deep blue dresses. They carried bunches of flowers and made their way to the altar, arranging themselves gracefully. When the music stopped, the bridal march began. Everyone in the church stood and turned to watch the entryway. That's when I started to feel nervous, while the guys calmed down. Why was that? My father appeared in the doorway, walking my beautiful bride toward me. I couldn't believe my eyes. My heart raced, and I felt a lump in my throat. It was like my first day on the job. She was stunning. Her dress was a soft, pale blue that flowed elegantly down to her ankles with sleeves that hugged her arms. A long white veil framed her face, and she wore lovely white heels. I was speechless and felt like this might be too much for me, but it was too late to turn back. As they moved down the aisle, she smiled and had a few happy tears. So did my dad, which was a surprise. I had never seen him like that before. She looked at me with a calm smile and a playful twinkle in her eyes. She was truly enjoying this moment. When they reached the altar, Michael joined his sister on her side, standing tall and proud. My father took Gloria's hand and looked down at the children beside him. Father Philip cleared his throat and asked, "Who presents this woman for marriage?" Michael and Marilyn shouted together, "We do," with big smiles. My dad lifted the veil, kissed her cheek, and smiled proudly. "Go and make him happy, princess." She wiped her eyes and kissed him gently. "Thank you, Dad," she replied with joy. Then she turned to me, held out her hand, and we faced Father Philip together. It felt like a fairy tale as I finally kissed my wife in front of everyone. My groomsmen chuckled while the church watched us, and the ladies in the bridal party turned a little red. It was just a kiss. Father Philip declared, "Ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan Stone." The crowd erupted in applause, and a joyful tune played as we left the ceremony. It was time to celebrate. We had the reception at the church hall with tasty barbecue from Mackenzie's. There was an open bar, and we danced with everyone. My parents were so happy, and my wife was even happier. She tossed her bouquet, and one of her office friends caught it. My older brother caught the garter, and I saw him glance at the young lady all day. While we mingled with our guests, my wife carried her little wedding purse, gathering cards and gifts, a common tradition. We just finished chatting with Louis and Mary when an elegant woman approached Gloria. It felt like time paused, and everything else faded away for a moment. The woman hugged Gloria warmly and kissed her, saying softly, "He is yours now. Love him, take care of him, and support him. He is a good man." After that, she handed Gloria a fancy envelope and turned to me. I was curious about who she was, a friend of Gloria's or someone from our families, but I was ready for a warm greeting, too. Gloria looked surprised. "Who is this beautiful woman? A friend of Jack's? Did he choose her over me? Is she my competition?" The lady smiled and shook her head softly. But instead of a hug for me, she just shook my hand. She looked into my eyes and said, "Congratulations." A thought struck me as everything else faded away. "Jonathan Stone, you have received a special gift. She is that gift. Care for her and cherish her. Be happy. It is a new beginning for you." She smiled, and I shook my head to clear my thoughts as things returned to normal. I looked around and she was gone. Everyone was staring, trying to figure out who she was. Gloria stepped closer to me. "Who was that?" she asked, confused. "I have no idea, but she kissed you. She just shook my hand," I replied, looking back at her. Slowly, Gloria touched her lips in disbelief and said, "I don't know who that was. I've never seen her before. She told me you are mine forever and that I should love you and take care of you." She smiled and looked down. "She said I am responsible for your happiness." She started to wonder if the mysterious woman knew about our plans. I was speechless. So we went back to enjoying the party. Later, we remembered the envelope we found. Inside, there was a thin sheet of gold engraved with the message, "On your special day, love one another, cherish one another, and be loyal to one another. May you both find happiness." It was signed with a fancy letter K. We never found out who sent it. By the time we arrived at our hotel for the night, the mysterious woman was on a private jet heading to Marseille, France, to take care of some business. She smiled, thinking of a line from a favorite movie, "I love it when a plan comes together." She felt satisfied with how things turned out. We checked into the hotel at the airport. Gloria was wearing a simple blouse and skirt topped with a warm sweater. I got the keys to our room on the 7th floor, the top floor since it was near the airport. The suite was spacious, around 1,400 square feet. After we dropped off our bags, we were alone. My wife turned to me and said, "You have been so good. I hope we can relax a bit now." She took off her sweater and walked toward the bathroom. "Let the fun begin," she said playfully, picking up a small bag and closing the door behind her. I felt anxious. What if she was planning to leave? I tried to calm myself down. I figured that bag didn't hold much. I turned to the bed and changed into lighter clothes. A little while later, the bathroom door opened and the light went off. Gloria came out wearing a long, simple nightdress. She wore a pair of pink, flowery shoes and nothing else. She walked gently to the foot of the bed where I sat. She looked at me, then glanced at my almost bare body. A smile spread across her face. "I knew it would be worth waiting for," she thought. "Jack, I am yours forever. This is my gift to you." With that, she gently undid the bows on her nightdress. It slipped down and fell to the floor, leaving her just in her slippers. She looked stunning. Her beautiful skin had a few small scars, probably from her past, but they only added character to her beauty. She was mine to care for and cherish through good times and bad forever. Then I noticed 3 small marks on her body. One mark was a little M in blue, and across from it was another in pink. Above those, there was a small heart, surrounded by roses with the name Jack inside. I had this done 2 months ago, so it would heal for our wedding. I carry you and my children in my heart, but you are my closest love. I love you, Jack Stone. Please love me. What could I say? I stood up and set my things aside. I stepped closer and wrapped my arms around her, holding her tightly. I kissed her with all the love I had for her, some of which I had held in for months. She kissed me back warmly, and we soon found ourselves on the big bed. I explored her soft form, cherishing her laughter as I playfully touched her. As I learned her sensitive spots, I discovered ways to make her feel joy without crossing lines. She would let out happy cries, and I felt so connected to her. In those moments, I knew our love was special. We celebrated our feelings for each other, feeling deeply connected. A few hours later, I woke up and brushed my hand across her belly, just because I loved her. A moment later, she took my hand and led it gently. "I was wondering how long it would take you," she said with a playful tone. She pulled me closer, and I felt the warmth of our bond. It was a peaceful night, and we spent it close, simply enjoying each other's company. We stayed warm under the blanket, sharing quiet words and soft laughter until sleep gently took us. In the early hours of the morning, she stirred and woke me. Her energy surprised me, but it was filled with warmth and affection. She gazed at me with a playful smile, her happiness lighting up the dim room. "You know," she whispered softly, "tonight has been special. Each moment was for a different reason, our connection, our joy, and just for me to remember." Her words carried a sense of gratitude and closeness, making the moment all the more meaningful. As the night passed, we stayed close, sharing quiet moments of laughter and whispers. She rested her head on my chest, her soft breathing a soothing rhythm. I wrapped the blanket around us, ensuring we stayed warm. She suddenly noticed a small scratch on my arm, her face filling with worry. "Oh no, you're hurt," she said, her voice filled with concern. I gave her a reassuring smile. "It's nothing," I said. "I'm just glad you're here." She smiled back, her eyes sparkling as she relaxed against me. "Just remember," she teased gently, "next time we have a disagreement, you owe me this memory." The night was filled with a peaceful sense of connection and trust, a moment that neither of us would soon forget. "I'm not sure how we reached such a high standard," I stated. "It's been a long day, and I'm tired. I promise to do better next time." I smiled, and she laughed as she playfully pushed me. "I'll remember that," she whispered, as we drifted into a peaceful sleep. We woke up at 9:30, and since I had the presidential suite, we decided to order breakfast in. As she slowly got out of bed to take a shower, I couldn't help but playfully tap her back. "Looks good," I said with a grin. "You like that? Maybe you can do it again later." She tossed over her shoulder as she headed to the bathroom. I thought about following her, but decided against it. I wasn't sure I had the energy left for more than just a shower. Breakfast arrived, and I thanked the waiter before setting up our little table. She came out wearing a cozy hotel robe and a towel wrapped around her hair. While she dried her hair, I poured coffee. Our spread included scrambled eggs, sausage, home fries, salsa, toast, and orange juice. We ate quickly, as if we were really hungry, which we probably were. After breakfast, we sat by the big windows enjoying mimosas and playfully tapping our feet together. As I relaxed, she playfully nudged me, and then she suddenly shifted to sit next to me. I chuckled at her antics. "When do we need to check out?" she asked. "We don't have to if you don't want to. It's just money," I replied with a smile. She laughed and leaned closer, giving me a warm look. After we finished, she playfully teased me and said, "I'll keep this little surprise for later." "Sounds great," I replied. We got up to dress and go downstairs. While getting ready, I couldn't help but notice her new clothes. "I bought some new things for you," she said with excitement. "I have some cute options that are just for us. I want to wear them for you." I was speechless as I saw her choose a lovely outfit. She looked stunning, and everything she tried on her style really suited her. As she finished getting ready, she looked like a lively young woman, full of energy and charm. She may be older, but she still feels like a teenager sometimes. "What do you think, cowboy?" she asked playfully. "I think I'm in love. Hold on, let me check." I walked over to her and pulled her into my arms. We should have shared a kiss the night before, but we were in a fancy hotel, so we saved it for later and headed downstairs. When I handed the keys to the clerk, she learned it was our honeymoon, and suddenly the extra charges for late checkout and breakfast were gone. I felt my cheeks heat up when I mentioned we had borrowed 2 hotel bathrobes. I offered to pay for them, but she just laughed. "Don't worry, sir. You're not the first person to do that. We would have been surprised if you hadn't," she said, handing me the receipt. As we were leaving, she leaned in and whispered, "Congratulations, you two." I felt even more embarrassed, but Gloria linked her arm with mine and proudly said, "Thank you, dear." Everyone heard her. We said our goodbyes and headed to the Bronco to leave for Corpus Christi. Gloria settled in, carefully tucking her legs under her. I didn't know how she managed that, but I liked it. She had her travel blanket and her car pillow, often curling up with her head on the console while gently teasing me with her touch. Somehow, we made it to Corpus Christi. Actually, the bed and breakfast was on Padre Island. It was a cozy little place opened by some family of a friend from work. They were hoping to succeed, and since it was February on the Gulf Coast of Texas, we got a great deal in exchange for a good review. So we spent a week on the beach, feeling like we were in paradise. After leaving Houston, we arrived at Padre Island in about 4.5 hours. The room was warm and cozy with a small fireplace. A quick step outside and we were on the beach, a short walk from the mostly closed shops and restaurants. It was the perfect escape for 2 people in love just like us. We shared many sweet moments and talked for hours. We took long walks on the beach, even finding some sand in unexpected places. We enjoyed late lunches and early dinners, exploring and buying quirky souvenirs to remember our time together. One of the most special things we found was at Walmart, of all places. We were just searching for little gifts to take home for the kids when she suddenly stopped. Her eyes were fixed on a small pair of snowflake-shaped earrings, gleaming in the display. "They're beautiful!" she exclaimed, her excitement contagious. I picked up the small box, surprised to see so many similar ones nearby. I called her Sweetheart a lot lately. Maybe I should find another name to use for her. They cost $14.92. They're not even real cubic zirconium. "I'm not sure what they are," I said. "But they're beautiful," she replied, hesitating. "Please?" she said with a hopeful look that always made me give in. "Come on. What could I say? For $15. 00? Okay. If you want them and it makes you happy, no problem," I smiled. It was funny how in love we were. We talked about our relationship and how things were changing. She shared that she wasn't a big fan of trying new experiences, but if I wanted to explore, we could. It was simple for me, and I knew what made her happy. During one of our long night walks, she mentioned a chat she had with my mom a few weeks back. Mom had shared something troubling about when she was pregnant with me. "Do you know what happened, Jack?" she asked. "Not really, dear. I thought they were always happy," I replied honestly. I believed that until I spoke with my dad. But I had promised my mom I wouldn't bring it up, and if she kept it to herself, then she probably thought I didn't know either. Finally, the week went by, and we returned home. We felt refreshed yet tired and couldn't let go of each other's hands. Then our kids rushed out to greet us. "Mommy, Daddy!" they shouted excitedly. They jumped into our arms, and my parents looked happy to see us, though they seemed worn out. Dinner was ready, and they handed us the keys to our new apartment. The next day would be church, and Monday we'd return to work. That night, we shared a quiet moment in our new bed together. For the first time, it felt special, and I cherished every minute. There was one more thing we needed to do, and it would take a few weeks to complete. But I knew it would work out. Evelyn had prepared adoption papers for me to legally become the kids' father. It would be their birthday surprise when Michael turned 8 in 3 months. Keeping it a secret was tough. On Monday morning, I joined my team for a briefing. Lieutenant Wasser had received some information from Louis Villoni. His sources had overheard some suspicious people at a police auction looking to buy 4 17-foot U-Haul-type trucks for moving things from Mexico. The odd part was that these individuals worked for Mela Trucking and had plenty of larger trucks. So why were they interested in smaller ones? Were they planning something different? Curious. Louis reached out to Clint, which brought in the FBI and the State Department. They found out that 4 trucks had been gathered from different places in the Southwest and driven to Mexico. The Mexican Federal Police had uncovered a serious drug operation and were surprised to find that one of their remote locations was being used for auto repairs and painting. They managed to send pictures back to the U.S. showing the trucks being repainted to display the colors and logo of Mela Trucking. It was clear they were preparing to transport something back to the U.S. The big questions remained. What, where, and when? The federal agents pressed several informants they had over to gather more information. What they uncovered was a plan to send nearly 8 tons of drugs to Texas, which would be distributed across the country using Mela's transcontinental trucks. They even had several customs officials on their payroll to help at border crossings, ensuring no one got too close to the cargo. The trucks were to go to the estate of Jason Wildress, situated in a remote area north of Lake Conroe. It was a secluded location, with a stone wall and lots of land, making it an ideal place for their plan. The feds enlisted the Texas Highway Department and devised a strategy. The DEA and FBI would get a matching truck painted to look like the others. With construction work ongoing at the interchange of I-10 and Beltway 8, they planned to swap their truck for the last one. The feds' truck would be set up with benches for 20 officers and a communication console, allowing them to stay in touch with various teams when they approached the compound. The compound belonged to Mr. Wildress, who was also the senior vice president at the advertising company Alders, Wildress & Jones. He was also the person Lauren had left Jack for. Everything was seeming to come together, at least on paper. We were ready to start the operation once the trucks reached the city limits of Houston. Aerial surveillance would kick off, and the tactical action would begin when the trucks entered the designated area. My partner, Dave Anderson, and I were the local police support and would be in the vicinity once contact was made. Things began to unravel just as we were preparing our vehicle to head to the lake. My phone rang around 12:30 p.m. just after lunch, while Dave and I were discussing grabbing some fast food. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was Evie. I picked up, "Hi, sis. What's going on?" Immediately, she asked, "Have you heard from Gloria lately?" She was supposed to pick up some papers from a client on the south side before heading back to the office after leaving the courthouse downtown. We haven't heard from her, and she didn't make the appointment. I can't reach her. It goes straight to voicemail. She sounded really worried. I was starting to panic. I was thinking of the worst things that could happen. "I'll call you back, Evie," I said, ending the call. I tried calling Gloria, but I got the same answer. I was frustrated. I then used the locator app for her phone. Got it, the courthouse. "Come on, Dave, we need to go now." He grabbed 2 bottles of water, and we rushed to the sturdy Ford Expedition. He looked at my face. "I'll drive. Where to, Jack?" "Courthouse, lower-level parking garage, and hurry." We made it downtown quickly and drove into the garage. It was a little after 1 p.m. We pulled in and saw Gloria's car parked in a reserved spot. We parked behind it and jumped out, but she was not there. However, her keys were on the ground by her driver's door with a little seagull charm attached. "Not good." Dave was more composed. "All right, Jack, check the locator app." I took a deep breath and opened the app. It showed her phone was right above us. I tapped her number and her ringtone started playing a cute song I had heard many times when we lost her phone at home. I followed the sound and found her phone in a nearby trash can. I took it out and turned it off, checking to see if there was anything important on it. Nothing useful. I turned to Dave. "Bring the car around front. I'm going to security to see what I can find." I rushed to the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby as Dave sped off with lights and sirens toward the courthouse entrance. I got out on the first floor and ran to the guard station. The officer had seen us before and was somewhat prepared. "I need to see the video from the garage about 50 minutes ago." He checked the time and pressed some buttons. The screen turned on, showing the usual scene until a petite woman in slacks and a blazer appeared. She was jingling her keys and holding a folder. As she got to her car, a big black Cadillac Escalade with red stripes entered the frame. The car stopped and a man got out. He looked rough and grabbed Gloria. She dropped her keys and fought back. He pulled her into the car and slammed the door. "Freeze that and print it. I need a copy of the license plate." I grabbed my radio. "All units, be advised. Kidnapping in progress. Victim is Gloria Stone, 28, Hispanic female, taken from the Montgomery County Courthouse. Vehicle is a late-model Cadillac Escalade, black with red stripes, license plate number Jazz Wheel, Texas tags. One male involved, believed to be Rafael Santos, 30. The suspect is considered dangerous." Just then, a man stepped out of the elevator, walked to the Cadillac, and got into the back seat. The car drove away. Shortly after, Dave came in, and we took the printout. I told the officer to keep the tape from the last 2 hours for the investigation, and we hurried out. We got into our vehicle and left with lights on and sirens blaring as I checked the traffic cameras. Then a terrible thought hit me. The kids! I quickly grabbed the radio. "Dispatch, this is one David 7, requesting a unit to be sent to Ellis Elementary School and establish a lockdown. There may be a kidnapping attempt of 2 children, Michael Ortiz, age 7, and Marilyn Ortiz, age 5.5. Roger, one David 7 units are on the way. Be aware that the suspect's vehicle is registered to Jason Wildress, age 42, from Conroe. The vehicle was seen on Route 105 West towards Lake Conroe. Units are in pursuit." "We're on our way, Jack. Don't worry, we'll find them. They'll be safe." I frowned. I grabbed my phone and quickly called the school, reaching Assistant Principal Janice Soames, a former classmate. She knew us and had even attended our wedding. She answered after a few rings. "This is Janice Soames. Who is this?" "JJ," I replied, using our high school nickname. "This is Jack Stone. I need you to keep my kids safe. Gloria has been taken, and I'm afraid they might come for the kids next. Please, I'm begging you." She quickly returned to her role as a friend. "I just got the lockdown alert, Jack. I'm sorry. We'll manage it here. The kids are okay for now. You just take care of things on your end. Good luck, Jack, and stay safe." "Thanks, JJ." I was close to tears, but Dave brought me back to the moment. "Look at the screen, Jack. We've spotted them approaching the turnoff west of Westmere Village. We should reach them in about 12 minutes. I'm driving as fast as I can. The state police said if they make that turnoff, they have 2 units ahead of them. 3 more units are behind us. I turned off the sirens, but the lights are still on." He glanced at me with a smile. "At least it's not boring being your partner." I smiled back. "Thanks, buddy." Meanwhile, about an hour earlier in the Escalade, Gloria entered the back seat and saw a woman in a nice outfit. She looked like she used to be attractive, but now appeared worn out. "So this is Jack's new companion," the woman said. Gloria sat quietly, her mind racing as Santos rifled through her purse. He finally found her phone and, with a cruel grin, tossed it out the car window into a trash can. "Yeah, this is Gloria Ortiz," he sneered, mocking her. Gloria stayed silent, but her thoughts burned with frustration. She glanced at the woman sitting next to her Lauren. It hit her like a wave. This was the woman from Jack's past. For the first time, Gloria felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life she had built with Jack. Turning to Lauren, Gloria's temper flared. "So you're the one who messed up Jack's life," she said sharply. "Thanks for walking away from him. I'm happy to pick up what you threw away." Lauren's face hardened. Her pride stung. "Who do you think you are?" she snapped, her voice cold with disdain. Without warning, she slapped Gloria across the face. Gloria's cheek stung, but instead of backing down, she clenched her fists. With a flash of determination, she retaliated, striking Lauren hard enough to send her reeling against the car seat. Blood trickled from Lauren's nose, staining her expensive outfit. Gloria, shaking from adrenaline, found herself pulled back before she could do more. Santos stepped in, separating them with a smirk. "That's enough," he said, his voice dripping with mock authority. "I can't have you ruining the plans. You'll both be part of the entertainment for our guests soon, and I need you in one piece." His words chilled Gloria to the core. He continued, his tone turning darker. "Once they're done with you, you'll wish you were never born. And don't think your family is safe. We'll make sure they see everything before we take them away. No one can stop us, not the FBI, not the DEA, not anyone." Gloria felt the weight of his threat. Her heart sank as she realized the magnitude of the danger. Her entire world seemed to collapse around her. Desperate and terrified, she thought of Jack, clinging to the hope that he would somehow save her. Where was Jack? She needed Jack. Their kids needed him. Oh God, please help me. Her thoughts changed when the passenger door opened, and a tall, fit man with blonde hair and a bit of gray came in. He leaned over to kiss Lauren, but stopped when he saw her face. "What happened to her?" he asked Santos. "Just a little argument with our guest," Santos replied, pointing to Gloria. The man smirked and said, "You must be the cop's wife." He looked at her, then turned back to Santos. "She'll be a nice distraction at the party this week," he chuckled. Gloria trembled. She was angry. She was also scared. "Oh, God, please help my children. Where's Jack?" The man signaled to the driver, and the car drove out of the garage. Where were they going? What would happen? Gloria felt frightened and confused. Back to the present. But Jack knew. He was taking action. He crawled to the back of the truck and grabbed 2 vests, a shotgun loaded with rubber bullets, another with real ones, and some tear gas canisters. He brought them to the front, and he and Dave put on the vests. Jack helped Dave secure his as he drove. They were now 3 miles back and closing in, while the Escalade was nearing the state police about a mile ahead. Meanwhile, the truck convoy entered the compound. After the gates closed, 3 helicopters landed, and the back door of the 4th truck opened. 20 agents spilled out, and other vehicles rushed through the gate with more agents. Some shots were fired, and a few members of the cartel were taken out. The rest gave up. The raid was a success, but the situation was still unfolding. The Cadillac had received a message about what was happening, and the people inside were nervous. They discussed where to go. Just as they decided to head to the nearby airport where Wildness had a small plane, they came face to face with a state police roadblock. They slammed on the brakes in panic, about 40 feet from the squad cars. Suddenly, the speakers blared, "This is the state police. Stop the car, throw the keys out the window, and come out with your hands up. Now." For a brief moment, silence hung in the air. Then, without hesitating, the 2 men in front jumped out of the car and started shooting. Santos opened his door and jumped out, returning fire with a handgun. Luckily for him, Wildness didn't have a weapon. The police shot back and ducked for cover. As we arrived, Dave eased off the accelerator. He leaned closer and said, "Get ready, Jack." I braced myself against the dashboard as he bumped the back of the Escalade and parked. "Turn off your camera. The crash might have messed it up." He smiled at me, and we opened the doors, stepping out. He held the shotgun, and the first 2 shots hit the driver hard. The impact had tilted the car, and the passenger got caught in the door. I fired a rubber bullet to keep him down and then aimed at Santos as he turned. He hit the door frame, dropping his weapon. I walked towards him as he struggled to get up. I kicked his gun away just as the officers arrived at the scene. I pulled him up and said, "Hello, I'm Jack Stone, Gloria's husband. If you've hurt her, you'll regret it. The other officers won't interfere." I pushed him against the door frame, and I felt something crack. I hit his chest, and there was another snap. Then I turned him around and placed handcuffs on him. When I pushed his face against the window, the glass cracked, and there was some blood. I checked my camera. Thankfully, it was off. I turned it back on and read him his rights. The officers arrived, and I handed Rafael Santos over to them. I turned just in time to see Gloria nearly tumble out of the car. I caught her and held her tightly. She gasped for air as she came to her senses. "Jack, is it really you? Oh, I knew you would come for us." He smiled, but his eyes drifted past her to the back seat of the crippled Escalade, where my ex-wife, Lauren, lay unconscious. An ambulance and 2 more police cars pulled up. I helped Gloria sit down and went around the other side as Jason staggered out. I steadied him by his fancy suit jacket. He looked frightened and pale. I looked him straight in the eye. "You know who I am." He nodded, and his expression turned even whiter. With a whimper, he started to cry. I felt a surge of satisfaction and tightened my grip. "Thank you," I said, shaking his hand. "You saved me from her," I added, nodding towards Lauren. I released his hand and pushed him toward the officers. "Read him his rights and cuff him. He's facing charges of kidnapping and child endangerment, as well as transporting illegal substances. And add a few other charges for good measure," I said, pleased. They smiled and quickly secured him with handcuffs. I heard Gloria calling my name. I quickly rushed back to her side and held her close. She looked up at me with concern in her eyes. "The children! We need to get to the children! They're in danger!" Just then my radio crackled to life. 1 David 7, the situation is under control. The children are safe and 2 people have been taken into custody. The school lockdown will end in about 45 minutes according to policy. I smiled as she looked at me with admiration. "You took care of the kids?" I returned her gaze with a grin. "Of course. I'm their dad, right? That's what dads do." I held her tighter, comforting her as she leaned against me, softly crying. What was happening? Officers Smith and Jones were on patrol when the lockdown alert sounded. They went to the cafeteria entrance as per their training and then headed to the office. There they met Vice Principal Janice Soames, who took them to the classrooms. Donna went into one classroom to help with Marilyn's students while Ollie was taken to another. Marilyn recognized Donna, and the vice principal introduced the officers as guests to talk about safety. 10 minutes later, 3 police cars arrived with 4 officers and a sergeant. They quietly waited in an empty room. Shortly after, 2 people claiming to be from Child Protective Services arrived at the front desk, saying they needed to take Marilyn and Michael into protective custody due to serious allegations. They were led to the classroom and met by the police officers. The arrest took place without the students finding out anything troubling. It was a well-managed situation. "I knew you would come for us. I just knew it," Gloria said softly. I gently pulled back and kissed her forehead. "I came for you. You're the only one who matters to me," I replied, starting to feel worried for her. That's when she perked up, looking her lively self again. "No, you silly ees." She took my hand and placed it on her belly, lifted her chin, and smiled brightly at me. The tough cop was taken aback. I couldn't find the right words. I stared, surprised. "I was waiting for you to say something about me getting fat," she teased. "You're pregnant?" I exclaimed. She laughed and cupped my face in her hands. "And you're the detective. Good thing you're charming," she chuckled, her earlier tears replaced by a beautiful glow. Everything was right in her world again. I, on the other hand, was still thinking about a lot of things. "You're pregnant," I shouted as Dave walked up after speaking with the officers. "She's pregnant," I repeated. Dave looked at me and then at Gloria. "Wow, Jack, I was only gone for about 5 minutes. That was quick." He smiled, kissed Gloria on the cheek and said, "Congratulations," then shook my hand. "How you managed to be with her, I'll never know." Just then, Sergeant Joseph LaPierre of the Texas State Police arrived, followed by his partner, Trooper Marks. "What's this about a baby?" he asked. I spoke up again. "She's pregnant." Sergeant LaPierre smiled, kissed Gloria on the cheek, and said, "You must be Gloria, or he's in a lot of trouble. Congratulations." He then turned to me and offered his hand. "And you are Detective Jack Stone. Sergeant Jack Stone, if I understand correctly. Odell speaks very highly of you, both as an officer and a friend. Nice to meet you. Your skills," he indicated the damaged cars, "are legendary." He grinned. Dave laughed. "Actually, I was driving. Jack was a bit distracted at the time." Trooper Marks chuckled along. Gloria chimed in. "Can't you arrest anyone without causing a car crash? This is getting old, Jack," she laughed. But then she began to shake and looked like she might cry again. She put her hand to her head and closed her eyes. "Oh, wow, what a headache!" Jack snapped to attention. "Headache? Car crash? Let's get you over to the EMTs." He took Gloria's arm and the blanket around her and guided her to the ambulance. The EMTs were busy treating some injured people, but once they learned Gloria was the victim, they quickly focused on her. They checked her vitals, drew blood, and did everything necessary. After about 45 minutes, the lead medic let her stand up despite her protests that she just had a headache. Jack had never left her side. "She's tough, but I think she's okay. Keep an eye on her. Don't let her sleep for about 6 hours, and make sure she drinks plenty of water. If she even dozes off for a second, get her to a hospital right away." "Are you her husband?" he asked Jack. "Yeah, she's pregnant," was all Jack could manage to say. "Hey, detective, calm down. I believe she's just shaken up. You can take her home unless you want to argue about going to a hospital. He glanced at Gloria. If it were me, I'd just take her home, like I said. Just keep an eye on her. He patted Jack's shoulder, then turned back to work, saying, "And congratulations." Jack took a deep breath, put a smile on his face, and turned to collect his determined wife. As he came closer, she spotted him. "I'm pregnant, not in danger," she said firmly. He laughed and replied, "Let's go get the kids. They're fine, too." She smiled more. "I know, I heard. Thank you, dear," she said sweetly and kissed him warmly. While she was being cared for, the state police and FBI agents had talked with her. She shared the details about her time in the car while she was held. Her information was very helpful. She was a strong witness because she had a personal reason to speak out and was quite upset. They were gathering facts to add more charges, and Gloria's words were important. We returned to the car. She handled the crash with the other vehicle much better than my car did. The crime lab team had taken all of their photos, and a tow truck arrived to take the other car away. Dave and I signed some papers and went back to headquarters. Dave told me to sit in the back and check on Gloria. But be careful. She's a married woman, and I know her husband. He can be tough, he joked. Gloria looked into my eyes and teased. "Oh, a tough guy. I like that," she laughed. It was going to be a long drive back to the police station. When we arrived, there was a lot of cheering and playful teasing. We got into the car and headed to the school. I would have my brothers pick up the other vehicle later, but right now we needed to get the kids. We parked in the school lot. We talked for a bit. "So how far along are you? And when were you going to tell me?" I asked. She paused for a moment, looking out the window. Then she turned to face me. "I didn't mean to keep it a secret. We promised no secrets. But this felt different. I was so happy. I think I was being a little selfish. I had good news that I knew would make a lot of people very happy. Until I told anyone, it was just mine to hold. And that felt amazing. But I realize now that it wasn't right to keep it from the person I love the most, the one who makes me happy. I was going to tell you tonight." Her expression changed. Then my world almost fell apart. My kids, my unborn child, my husband, my life, everything nearly got lost. "And you showed up. You came and saved us without knowing about us. You saved me. Just like you did when you stopped that robbery, just as Michael said." Actually, Dave was driving, not me. I was just there. It wasn't my doing. I was talking too much. She looked at me and started to laugh. After that, everything felt better. We kissed and made up. She promised, "No more secrets." The kids came out and we heard about their day at school. We didn't mention the events of the day, but the exciting news spread and the kids were overjoyed. Then Marilyn asked about getting a dog. Mom laughed and asked if I thought that was a good idea. I thought to myself, why not? If she's up for it, it doesn't bother me. My mind was focused on getting a new house. Then came the big surprise. "Dad, where will the baby sit in the truck?" Michael asked. "Truck? My poor Bronco. There's no room in the back. We do have Gloria's Explorer, but what about my Bronco?" Gloria looked at me. "Is everything all right?" she asked. I shook my head and tried to come back to reality, though not my reality, but everyone else's. "Yes, dear. Everything is fine," I replied with a groan. We loaded the kids into the truck, and all the way to my parents' house, Gloria was watching me closely. I realized I needed to say something before this turned into a secret that could come back to haunt me. I took a deep breath and finally said, "There's no extra seat back there. Your car is fine. We'll just get another baby seat and strap it in the back. But my Bronco..." My voice faded away. She looked at me as if I had lost something important. "It's okay, darling, we'll fix it. Like you said, we still have the Explorer, we'll manage," she said with a smile, giving my arm a reassuring squeeze. Then she teased, "Besides, I'd rather keep the Bronco than you." I appreciated her lightheartedness. When we arrived at Grandma and Grandpa's house, everyone hopped out, and we went inside to share the good news. Life continued on, just like always. I decided the best way to deal with this was to sell the Bronco. I sighed, thinking, as John Wayne said, a man's got to do what a man's got to do. I went to the local off-road center where I had gotten all the cool upgrades for my Bronco. They had a good market for used trucks, and mine was quite popular. I spoke to Isaac, the owner, who was surprised. He knew how much I loved my Bronco. I explained the situation, and he laughed. "Congratulations," he said. Then he added that I was overreacting. "I can set you up with a full back seat. Harnesses included. That will work just fine. In fact, I know someone who's looking for seats just like yours. We can swap, and I'll even handle the installation," he offered with a grin. "But you'll have to manage the baby seat." "I don't know anything about babies," he joked. Suddenly, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Gloria was about 7.5 months along. I started attending doctor's visits, especially for the sonograms. Amazing what doctors can do these days. Around the 6-month mark, things shifted again. We were in the doctor's exam room. Gloria looked beautiful. She lay on the exam table, and the doctor was using the ultrasound machine, moving it over her belly and saying a lot to herself as she searched for something. I was feeling a bit worried, so I asked what the issue was. She looked back at me and said she couldn't see the internal organs clearly for both of them. "Both of them?" I thought. Then I said out loud, "Both of them?" "Yes, the twins. Haven't you been listening?" "Listening to what?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stone. In the last 2 visits, I mentioned that there could be multiple births. This visit confirms it. Congratulations. There are 2 healthy babies growing in your wife's womb." I needed to sit down. Thud. That felt better. Now, where were we? Twins? Gloria was so happy. She had a big smile on her face. She looked at me just as I fainted. When I came to, I saw the doctor, a nurse, and my wife looking worried. I shook my head and sat up. Everything looked the same, except I was on the floor. The nurse and doctor helped me to my feet. I waved them off, took a deep breath, and turned to Gloria. She looked pale but stayed still. She knew I was just in shock, and I would never harm her. Sigh. I took my seat again and took another breath. Then I gazed at her. "So, let me get this straight. Twins?" I couldn't get over that word for some reason. Then she put on that sweet look and said softly, "I thought you knew." Just like that. Another heavy sigh, and my mind started working again. The doctor explained what we could expect in the coming weeks and said that Gloria might need a section. I was really paying attention now and had moved from 1 word to 2. But twins? Gloria was overjoyed at my reaction. She was often tired, but the due date was about a month away, and she was just feeling uncomfortable. The doctor said she needed to stay in the hospital, so I took my leave from work. Once we got settled in, her doctor and a surgeon came in to check on her without talking to me at first. I didn't mind too much. I just cared about Gloria. Finally, they were leaving, and that wasn't okay with me. "Hey, you!" That got their attention. "Oh, Mr. Stone, I'm sorry, we didn't see you," the doctor said. "Well, you see me now. What's happening?" The surgeon had left, and it was just me, the doctor, and her nurse. "I'm sorry. We are getting your wife ready for a section. If you go with my nurse, she can help you get ready and you can watch," she said, straight-faced. I thought it was supposed to be my turn to joke. I'd talk to her later. But right now. Is she okay? Are the babies all right? "They're all fine, and we're going to keep them safe." She guided me to 2 chairs in the quiet room. Gloria was connected to several monitors and sleeping peacefully. "Isn't she a bit early, doctor?" I asked, feeling a little relieved. "Yes, about 1 month early, but that's okay. We're on top of everything and working hard to get this done. I apologize for not keeping you updated, but time is important." She stood up. "Now, if you'll go and get ready, you can meet your new family." I felt a bit better. The doctor left, and I kissed Gloria, telling her, "We need to talk later." Then I followed the nurse to prepare. The procedure went well, even if it felt strange to see something so important taken care of in such a clinical way. Sorry, I got a bit emotional, but it went smoothly without any problems. The doctors and staff at Conroe Medical Center were excellent, even if I was a bit of a wreck. I had come so close to having a happy life. I didn't want to lose it. I didn't. About 2 hours later, I was introduced to my son, Jonathan Michael Mariano Stone. 10 minutes after that, I was holding my daughter, Evelyn Maria Stone, in my arms. We had chosen the names weeks earlier. Our daughter was named after both of our mothers, and our son carried the names of me, my father, and Gloria's father. 3 names for a little guy, but he would handle it just fine. Gloria did wonderfully, but she was very tired. We had talked about having more kids, but with this being our 3rd and 4th, we felt it was best to stop. Gloria decided to have her tubes tied while she was under anesthesia. At Gloria's request, the doctor also did something called a father's stitch. Thank you, doctor. I owe you. We brought the kids upstairs to meet their new siblings. Grandma and Grandpa also got to meet their newest grandchildren. Gloria stayed in the hospital for about a week, and I never left her side. We slept close together. She kept trying to be playful, but the first time I told her, the doctor said we needed to wait until she healed. All of her stitches. She smiled and said she understood, but it was entertaining to see me getting a bit restless. The light, affectionate moments, however, were still there. We took the kids home to 2 bassinets in our bedroom. It was tight, but we would manage until we found a bigger place. Gloria focused on healing so she could return to her normal routine. The legal case was moving slowly, but we were getting closer. Soon it would all be over, and then we could start fresh. Trial and punishment. The government usually takes 46 months to process passports, so it wasn't surprising that the case against the offenders dragged on as well. Because of the big names caught at the compound, they had good lawyers who filed many requests to delay or dismiss the charges against them. Meanwhile, our little family was doing well. The children were growing strong, Mommy was feeling better, and Daddy enjoyed the peace after a few months of being on his own. We spent a long weekend together to celebrate our anniversary in February. We went back to Padre Island. I had planned to take Gloria to Bermuda, but with the kids around, it was just not possible both money-wise and emotionally. Plus, we had just bought a small house in Cut and Shoot, which kept us busy. Last May, we had a birthday party for Michael at my parents' house. Many gifts were given. Michael received baseball bats, remote-controlled cars, books, videos, cash, and magazine subscriptions from Uncle Louie and Aunt Mary. But the most surprising gift came from Aunt Evie and Uncle Dan. They handed Michael a manila envelope, which also included his little sister. It didn't seem like much at first. When he opened it and saw the court papers, he learned that his last name was now officially Stone. Tears flowed everywhere. Everyone was emotional. Even their strong father felt a little teary. Soon, they would have siblings to join them, which made everyone excited. The next day, we visited a friend at the animal shelter because we wanted to adopt a dog. The kids wandered around looking at various dogs when Tracy, my friend, mentioned one last option. There was a litter of Irish setters, but they were very young and didn't have their mother with them. One of the puppies looked small and a bit sad. I tried to persuade the kids to pick a different dog, but they thought the little one was adorable. Gloria took on the motherly role. "He needs love and care," she insisted. I turned to Tracy and said we would take the puppy if we could have him right away. She explained that he needed to be neutered first, as per state law. I gave her a disapproving look, the kids pleaded, and Gloria gave Tracy a convincing look. Tracy sighed and changed his age on the chart so we could take him home. We were all thrilled, and I became the hero of the day. All in all, our family was thriving. The state of Texas was moving forward with the kidnap charges, and the county had assigned ADA Rachel Lowe's to oversee the case. We had a court date lined up, and Gloria would be the main witness. The group I jokingly called the Stupid Three decided to face their charges together, instead of separately. The assistant district attorney was surprised by their choice, thinking it would be easier to take them all down at once. When Daniel found out who was handling the case, he made sure to clear his schedule to be in court. Evie and Amanda Adams, the young woman who caught the bouquet at our wedding, were also there. They sat with Gloria, keeping an eye on the sleeping babies beside them. Their mother often said they could sleep anywhere, just like their father. Amanda was engaged to my oldest brother, who had caught the garter at the wedding. Gloria seemed restless, not nervous really, just eager to confront the situation. I watched closely, interested in what would happen next. From the prosecution's view, the trial was a joke. First, Jason Wildness took the stand. He claimed he didn't know Gloria and had no intention of harming her. The only question Rachel asked was about his relationship with Lauren Boebert. Jason reluctantly admitted he knew her well, which got Rachel's attention. Rachel asked him about his 2013 Cadillac Escalade, showing him a video from the garage security cameras that depicted the events around the kidnapping. As the footage played, everyone in the courtroom reacted with shock, and the judge had to bang the gavel repeatedly to restore calm. Jason looked stunned and struggled to respond. Daniel quietly praised Rachel's performance. Evie shot him a look but agreed with him, saying she was indeed impressive. Once done with Jason, the judge turned to the defense side, asking if there were any more questions. They had none. Next was Rafael Santos. He claimed he had tried to avoid Gloria, describing her in a negative way. He mentioned that he had moved to California hoping to escape her, but it hadn't worked. Rachel then asked Rafael why he had acted aggressively toward Gloria. He claimed he was innocent, saying their interaction was mutual. Rachel pointed out that Gloria had filed a restraining order against him and had not told him about their child. Before she could continue, Rafael lost his temper, shouting and rushing toward the gallery. He was quickly restrained and removed from the courtroom. I guess he didn't realize what was happening. As for Gloria, she didn't even blink. Later, she told me she was so surprised she didn't have a chance to react. Then came Lauren Boebert. The defense tried to paint her as a sad, lonely woman who felt stuck in a marriage without love. They said she was struggling with addiction and had been pushed away by her husband. Jason got upset, but the judge quickly stopped him. It seemed the defense was starting to show weaknesses. Lauren had no plans against Gloria. She had never even met her and didn't know what she looked like. "Oh, poor me," she whined, sounding overly dramatic. She pretended to be so grateful that I had found someone special. Rachel unexpectedly ran her fingers over her lips as she stood to face the witness stand. "Miss Boebert, why did you have an affair?" Rachel asked. "Objection, Your Honor. Those facts aren't proven. How is this relevant?" Lauren's lawyer, Jim Jones, interrupted but then turned to address the judge. Rachel's co-counsel quickly gathered papers for the judge. At Rachel's nod, he handed copies to the defense attorney. "Your Honor, these are copies of reports and evidence already with the defense regarding the breakdown of the marriage between Mr. and Mrs. Jonathan Stone." "None of this supports Miss Boebert's claims," Rachel stated firmly as she turned to Lauren. "Maybe you should reconsider your statement, Miss Boebert." Judge Eileen Hanks was reviewing highlighted documents, especially a letter Lauren had written to Jack. It was marked as significant evidence from both the divorce case and the kidnapping matter. The judge looked up and said, "Objections overruled. Miss Boebert, if these documents are as truthful as they seem, I'm holding you in contempt of court and charging you with lying under oath. Bailiff, please escort Miss Boebert out." Now it was Lauren's turn to break down. She was taken away in handcuffs, and the defense attorneys looked shocked, flipping through papers they should have read before the trial started. The judge turned to Mr. Jones and asked, "Is there anyone else you would like to call?" "No, Your Honor. The defense would like to speak with the assistant district attorney for a moment," he replied. The judge agreed and signaled for the two attorneys to talk. Jim Jones suggested a deal to Rachel. He offered misdemeanor assault charges, leaving out any mention of kidnapping and child endangerment, with a minimum sentence and 7 years of probation. After a short laugh, Rachel replied, "See you at closing, counselor," and walked away. The judge then asked if the state would be calling any witnesses. "Your Honor, I have more than 2 pages of names that could offer very interesting testimony, but I will only call one person, Mrs. Jonathan Stone." Gloria stood up and walked to the front. She had been waiting for this moment for several months. She raised her right hand and took the oath, then kissed the Bible. I thought to myself, "This is important." Rachel began. "Mrs. Stone, were you expecting anything unusual when you went to work on April 17th, Atasa? Please call me Gloria. I'm not that old. And no, I did not think anything like what happened would occur." "What happened that day?" Rachel asked. So Gloria shared her story, starting from the garage and ending with the incident on the road to the compound. She explained everything clearly, with a glance at the defense table. Lauren and Rafael were brought in, with Lauren wearing an orange jumpsuit and having her hands restrained, while Rafael only had his hands restrained. Gloria poured out her emotions, revealing the pain she didn't even know she had. She spoke about the ride and the confrontation. sharing her fear for her family. As she spoke, she felt a sense of relief. When she finished, it was like a heavy burden had lifted. She turned her attention away from the defense and looked for Jack, who was sitting behind their children. She smiled, a bright smile that showed her joy, and she knew it was all coming to an end. Jack responded with a smile and blew her a kiss. "No further questions, Your Honor," Rachel stated. The judge turned to the defense. "Counselor?" Jim Jones coughed and swallowed hard. He realized he was outmatched. "We have no questions for this witness, Your Honor," he said. Rachel looked over some papers and then met the judge's gaze. "The prosecution rests, Your Honor." "Very well," replied the judge. "Closing arguments will be tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Court is adjourned." He struck the gavel, the bailiff announced, "All rise," and the judge left the courtroom. The next day, court started promptly at 10 a.m. The defense presented their side, followed by the prosecution summarizing the case. The jury took about 58 minutes to reach a decision. They returned with a guilty verdict on all charges, recommending the toughest sentences for everyone involved. After the state's trial, the federal authorities moved forward with drug-related charges, smuggling, and bribery related to Border Patrol. They found everyone guilty as well. The state imposed the maximum sentences. Lauren received 18 years. Jason got 25 years, and Raphael was sentenced to 25 years to life. The federal sentences would follow after those. We were satisfied with the outcome. Life went on. 12 years passed. Michael graduated and went to the Naval Academy. Marilyn was accepted into nursing school. Jonathan and Evelyn were in middle school and growing up well. As for their mother, she was filled with happiness. She had found love. Every Sunday after church, she would kneel in front of the statue of the Virgin Mary, wearing her modest dress and long lace scarf, which I had given her on our first anniversary. She would speak a simple prayer for about 5 minutes, then bless herself and stand up. The kids and I would sit quietly in the pew behind her. I never knew her words or wishes, but she always looked peaceful afterward. Life together was wonderful. I felt healed, calm, and renewed. She felt the same. Meanwhile, 5,135 miles away in Hamburg, Germany, a beautiful woman was waiting outside a nightclub. An older man, looking unsteady, was leaning on a young blonde lady as they exited. As they reached his car, a driver opened the door for him. Suddenly, 3 young agents approached and helped the young woman with her task. They guided her into a nearby car that had quietly arrived while they assisted the man into his car. They all got in, and the driver drove off into the city, blending into the traffic. The woman smiled, knowing that the man's wife was aware of the valuable items he had collected over the years, items that were once stolen during the war. Disgusted with him, she decided to return those items to the rightful owners and, in return, would keep everything else he left behind when he was gone. The woman paused, smiling as she turned to the southwest, across the mountains and ocean. A vision of a younger woman appeared in her mind, and she heard her words clearly. "Whoever you are, wherever you are, thank you. For everything and forever, thank you." It felt like a moment in a church. The vision faded, but the woman continued to smile. It was a good day. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.